Okay, very good. Prove. Okay. Okay, hello everyone. I'm Avi. This is JC, and we're here to discuss. We'll discuss all the points on JC's post. I'll just share that for the audience over here. We could see this post. So JC made a post on Instagram and said it says the cervical cancer vaccine scam. Death numbers are being thrown around. Parents, little kids are pushed into taking vaccines. Based on what? Do we actually have cervical cancer death numbers? We must have, right? Or else how can we claim so many women are dying and every 8 minute, one woman dies of cervical cancer? I mean, we actually have road accident numbers, right? So we should be having cervical death numbers, right? Ladies and gentlemen, we don't. All the numbers are shared, are social media, and by your favorite doctors are to scare people, come from the OG 1 million death study, which recorded some 7,000 odd cancer deaths in 3 years, out of which 391 were cervical cancer deaths. That's roughly 130 cervical cancer deaths per year. These numbers are basically the base estimates to derive the scary numbers you see today. Whatever many may be the secondary sources. So whatever may be the secondary sources, those are the base numbers that it's being derived from. Oh, and can you guess who
That's right.
funded the study? I'm just going to go out. I'm just going to guess this. Let me guess. Is it Bill Gates? Um, at least the Bill Gates, or maybe Bill Gates Foundation, if there's a difference there. Coming to vaccines, they're being marketed as a magical tool against cervical cancer. Except there's not a single randomized controlled trial that has measured cervical cancer endpoints. What have they measured? CAN2, CAN3 lesions. Data suggests these are not good diagnostic markers. 50% of CAN2 lesions resolve on their own. Less than 18% progress to CAN3. CI3 lesions themselves have a 31% progression rate to cervical cancer. Overall, when you're looking at the absolute risk reductions for cervical cancer endpoints using HPV vaccines, which come from observational studies, you are looking at a number somewhere around 0.045% from the Swedish registry. The absolute harm is somewhere around 0.3% from future trials. When you put these together, there's no doubt HPV vaccines harm more people than it helps. This, ladies and gentlemen, is how people who don't understand stats are fooled worldwide. Benefits are uh, reported in relative terms, so like relative risk as opposed to absolute risk reduction, to exaggerate harms in absolute terms to downplay the side effects. So essentially, reporting relative risks for the benefits, reporting absolute risk for the harms, as opposed to the other way around, or as opposed to apples to apples. Gardasil, would you like me to explain this to human science? Okay. So I think we should go through each point in sequence. We can
Sure.
start with the first one. And I just want to make sure I understand your view fully before saying anything about it. So uh, putting this in, and you can tell me if I'm misunderstanding you or mischaracterizing your position. So if I could charitably phrase your position on this, what you seem to be saying is, hey, when we look at deaths, accidents on the road, a car crash, we get primarily enumerated data at the primary level. So police officers come, they make a report, that gets tabulated into registry. We have ways of getting all the police center registries. We have all that data, and that's primary data. So we can give that number. The number is whatever it is, but we can generate that. But when it comes to cervical cancer deaths, we don't have a similar sort of system like that. We don't have this total number that's spit out. I believe in India, I take it your comments are referring to the rates in India. Um, they're different here, but in India, I believe the number is somewhere around approximately 80,000 cervical cancer deaths per year. Uh,
Those are the estimates.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, the estimates, right, right. The estimated numbers are around somewhere around 80,000. And you want to say, well, okay, well, wait a minute. That's an estimate. It's a model. It's not the that's not the primarily enumerated number
Yeah.
that comes from primary data.
Yeah.
And so therefore it's not reliable. In some way. And there's a number of ways we can get there. Either you might think the primary data is so bad that any sort of modeling or estimate is going to be all over the place because there's so little primary data. The other way you might want to get there is you can say, okay, well, there's a problem with the way they did the modeling itself. So you can look at the specific methodology of the modeling and say you have a problem with this or a problem with that. Um, or you can say that any modeling, I don't think you are saying this, but someone might say, well, any modeling without just being all of it primarily enumerated is something we can't rely on. What I think you seem to be saying, if I could be charitable, I don't think you seem to be saying that any estimate is invalid or that any sort of modeling is invalid because we have that all the time. That's for every sort of, that's for heart disease, it's not just for cervical cancer, that's for a lot of things, and there's reasons for that. It seems like you're saying, I mean, there's an obvious reason for why in medicine, as opposed to car crashes, in car crashes, there's a very strong reason to go out there and have agents of the state enumerated for legal reasons. Someone might get arrested. Maybe there was a DUI. But in deaths for medical reasons, a lot of those deaths just happen in a patient's home where no agent of the state is around. And so it would be very impractical to have agents of the state knock on everyone's door and being like, are you dead yet? Are you dead yet? Are you dead from your cancer yet? Are you dead from your heart disease yet? Well, that would expend a lot of resources. It would violate a whole bunch of rights and blah, blah, blah. So we have there has to be a certain way we can model it. It's going to be very hard to primarily enumerate every single medical death like it is for car crashes. So what it seems like you're saying is not that charitably, you can correct me if I'm wrong. It seems like what you're saying is it's not that you're going to reject every sort of modeling for a death estimate or every sort of estimate. It's just that the primary data has to be of a certain standard. The primary data has to be somewhat robust. We can't just have we can't have like 10 deaths or we can't have 2 deaths and extrapolate on that. We can't even have 300 deaths and extrapolate. There has to be something. Now, if that's the case, what I would want to know is, let's say you and I were to go to, you're already in India. Let's say I were to come to India and we were to do this experiment ourselves. We were to try to estimate it ourselves. We're not going to primarily enumerate every cervical cancer death, but we're going to collect a certain amount. And I would want to know, what would you and I need to do? How many primary deaths would we need to collect? Because it's always going to be a small sample of the total for it to be enough primary data that we can reasonably extrapolate the death rate per year to the entirety of India. Like what would you need to see? Because you're saying that what you're seeing here from the million death study is not good enough. You're saying that's whatever it is, that's not good enough. 391 cervical cancer deaths over 3 years, only 130 cervical cancer deaths per year that comes out to be. We need more than that. So I would want to know what you would want to see. Like if we were doing this, if we were doing a data, what would you want to see to say, okay, maybe it's not perfect, but we can reasonably estimate the rate now that we got a small sample out of the total, but it was reasonable enough to extrapolate the total. Is there a number? What would you need to see?
Right. Before I tell you how I would do this or how I would base the model, I'd love to tell you what they have done so far. Okay, so in India, they have set up something called as hospital-based cancer registries and population-based cancer registries. So these are registries which report data directly to your IARC and ICMR, which is the primary medical research body in India. And so these registries have been set up across 28 states. But these states and these registries are only recording incidences. They are not recording mortality, or maybe they are not sharing mortality data, right? I could not find that data on their website. I could not find that raw data. My team has filed an RTI, which is Right to Information Act, against ICMR. And look, India is not one of those countries where chances of corruption is low. I mean, corruption happen in India every single day, right? So if you go through the entire ICMR website, you look at the Rajya Sabha questions, everything was raised in Parliament, and you look at all the estimated data, and the data is like back calculated. You get what I'm saying? So when I did a pattern drag recog on the data, I found out that, okay, this data is increasing in a certain percentage pattern, right? So every year, the numbers are increasing by plus 2.5%, plus
That the
2.6%.
the estimated numbers or the primary collection?
Yeah, the numbers which they shared in Rajya Sabha,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Now, if somebody raises a question on cervical cancer deaths, you're supposed to tell them that these are the basic number of deaths that have happened, and this is like the 10% representative of the country. Unfortunately, we don't even have the 10% representation. So we have 10% representation for incidences, but for mortality, we don't have that representation. Now, the problem with the billion million death study. Now,
Mhm.
this million death study collected stats from the period of 1998 till 2011, and then the study was published in 2012. But these mortality stats, they were covered for the period of 1998, 2000, and 2001.
Mhm.
The incidence numbers are from the period 2012 till 2016,
Mhm.
right? And what we have seen in the 2012 to 2016 numbers, out of 28 registries, at least 20 registries are showing incidences of decline in cervical cancer cases. Only 3 registries have showed increases in the incidences of cervical cancer, right? So if majority of your registries are showing a decline in incidence of cervical cancer cases, how can then you project that these numbers are increasing over a period of time? And so you've taken a base assumption from a different period for mortality. You're taking a base assumption from a different period of incidences, and you're completely ignoring the fact that majority of the registries show actually a downward trend.
So
And this
let's
is much
take
before the HPV vaccines came in
sure.
India.
So let's take putting the million. So let's take the million death study aside. Let's focus on the registries because they have more up to date. My understanding there's more
I mean, till
contemporary data.
2016. Yeah, till 2016.
Sure. There's yeah. So they've had it at least somewhat more contemporary than the Bill Gates Foundation.
Yeah.
Um, so so what would you need to see? Like, let's say, so let's so what I'm okay. So let's take that the cancer registry. So you're saying, okay, we only have incidents. We need some way of getting the mortality data. So
Okay.
let's say I can show. So what would you need me to show you? Let's say I show you that, okay, here is a subset of the registries that have mortality data. Um, I have 1 second. Give me a second. Okay. Sorry about that. That's probably a work-related call, but um, okay. So what would you need me to show you from the population registry? If I could find the subset of deaths that are happening in those registries, and they come out to be some, well, whatever it is, like if I get, this many deaths from this many cases over like 5 years follow-up or whatever, how many years they follow the patients in the registry. Would that be acceptable to start extrapolating or start making estimates
Yeah,
from?
sure.
Okay.
Sure. And then those estimates have to be proportional. For example, like I said, in the registry data, it's showing decline in incidence numbers. Okay, so you can't show increase in the numbers. There has to be some sort of a base trend, on which you model these estimates. So if the trend is declining, on what basis are you showing
Mhm.
an increase in the trend?
Yeah.
That's my bigger contention.
Is it okay if I take a work-related call real quick? I have there's a sorry about that. It's just I'll try to make it quick. One
Sure.
second. All right. So sorry about that. It was a work-related call. Apologies. Um,
Yeah, no worries,
okay,
man.
getting back to where, okay, so if I can show you that if I go into the population data cancer-based registries, I get the
Yeah,
mortality data over or a relatively recent time period, followed over
yeah,
this many years. Um, and uh, okay, so if I do that, we can start to make our own estimate. We may not have a lack of certain things, like we may not get all the data. We may not have the trend for everything. We may not have, maybe it'll be decreasing, maybe it'll be increasing. Um, that we may need more data for. But at the very least, if I can get the death rates over a subset, what we can do is we can calculate an incidence to mortality ratio. So
See, the problem is it has to be done over a similar kind of a time period because I know you're probably going to talk about the prevalence study which was done in 2022, and they
which
showed that
study?
there was a prevalence study which was done in 2022, and they estimated that the cancer mortality rates were somewhere around 50%. If
I
that's
don't
the
know if
study you're
that's
going
the
to.
same one. I think the it's I think there is a paper that does look at that
I
from the
know.
period
Yeah.
of 2012 to 2015, and they did follow for 5 years patients in the from the population database registry, and
Right.
they found the rate about 51%, I think, although the steady state population rate would be even higher than that because it comes from years that are before
Yeah.
that period. Um, I'm not sure if that's the same one you're referring to. But they did
I mean,
I know.
okay. So let's assume that mortality is 50%, even though we don't have the actuals. There's still the big question of incidence rates because we have the data from the registries which are showing declining trend in cervical cancer cases. And except for three registries, all of them, like three registries were showing increasing trends. Rest of the registries
How
are showing
much
declining trends.
by what factor or percentage are they declining?
So this was annual percentage change of -2, -3. There was one registry which even showed -4, -5.
Okay,
So there's
percent, but
substantial, yeah,
yeah, so we
substantial.
can we can that's fine. So we can get that data, and there's ways of looking at that trend for all the registries, and
I can open that in front of you right now. You can look at it and
sure,
if
sure. Yeah, no, that might, well, that
maybe
would, but just one second, because that would be an exercise. Because I'm not my what I would be comfortable establishing here is, instead of quibbling over like what exactly is it and where exactly is going, I would like to establish a minimum, like what I think the minimum is.
right, makes sense.
Maybe I
Sure,
won't be able to establish 80 the
yeah,
80,000 number in this call.
sure.
Maybe you'll have, so this is falling into a category where there's like a discordance, you think, between what the data is showing in the registries and what the final number is and how we can get there.
Yes, and
Maybe.
even though the source and the Globocan, the statistical modeling, they refer to the registry data, right? Which means that registry data is the single source of truth for incidences. And when you look at the Globocon data, it says 121,000 incidences. But if you look at the registry data for the period of 2012 to 2016, for 5 years, that's around 21 to 22,000 cases. You divide them by years and you get somewhere like 4,000 cases. And because this registry is a 10% representation, a linear scaling would mean 40,000 cases. Now, this is a linear scaling. But I'm saying you can do let's assume the crude risk, then you can do a age standardized risk,
Yep.
and you still get at a number which is substantially lower than
When you do the age
uh,
standardized extrapolation, what number do you get?
yeah. So I came to somewhere around 70,000, which is
Okay.
precisely what the ICMR directory also mentioned. They projected the number of cases to be 70,000 in the year 2020. And the problem with that estimate is because that number did not take the trend into consideration.
Okay. So that's
Yeah,
fine. So quibbles, so those sorts of issues with the estimates, I'm fine with. I would be happy after the call to take a deeper look. It's not
sure.
really the so whether it's 120 something thousand in cases, or whether it's 70,000 cases, that's not going to change my view on whether the benefits of
No,
HPV.
I'll tell you what
Yeah.
it changes though. What it changes though is that these numbers create a sense of urgency. Because if you tell somebody, hey, these many people are dying every year, when in
Hmm?
fact the number is, let's say, one-fourth of that number,
Yeah.
and suddenly like, oh, maybe it's not so bad.
Right. So for
Get my
me,
point. So,
yeah, no, I
numbers can be
understand.
scary.
I,
Yeah.
I hear you. For me, it would create a sense. For me, for someone living in the United States, even if the numbers are a fourth of that, we it would create a sense of urgency for us, even if the true numbers are a fourth of what are claimed in India. That's what I'm saying. For us, we have
We should do all
3,000.
that because
Our
India has a
estimate.
lot more pressing issues, and the vaccines are not cheap. They're expensive.
So that's another point. We can, but before we get to like whether vaccines are a appropriate intervention to address the urgency, I'm
Yeah,
just saying in the United States we have like 3,000 cervical cancer deaths a year. It's like
I
a
know, and they've been
tiny,
falling much before the
yeah,
vaccines
it's a
came
tiny
into the
fraction.
picture.
So that
Yeah,
tiny fraction of what is there in India, even if the Indian numbers in India are off by a factor of four, it would be
I mean, we have four times population, so the
no,
prevalence
no,
would
no.
not be.
I'm talking about rates. I'm adjusted for
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, but okay, but it's still even 3,000 deaths in the United States would still be substantially lower than the rate in India.
I get it. Yeah,
Yeah.
fair point.
So
We
for
can move on.
me,
Yeah.
yeah, even if it's so what I looked and I this may be the same study that you've been because this was a study of like 11 population based cancer registries, so a subset.
Mhm.
Um I can share this. Let's see. Portion of screen. Okay. So it's this paper. I'm not sure if this is the one you're referring to. Survival of patients with cervical cancer in India, findings from 11 population-based cancer registries under the
Sure.
National Cancer Registry Program. And now this doesn't have, so this is not 10% of the coverage because that involves 20 to 24 or something percent.
I don't know the story. Yeah, yeah, sure. This is N equals to 5,000 odd people. Yeah, this
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
showed mortality like 50%. Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
I've gone through.
exactly. Okay, so you're familiar with that. So,
Yes.
okay, so I understand the point about the trend.
Yeah,
I understand critiques. Yep.
but if you okay, but here's the thing: they did not refer to this registry. You are referring to this, but in the Globocon estimates, they have so they've mentioned the sources 2B and 3C. The 3C is for mortality. So if you go into the details of 3C, it will take you to the Bill Gates study, right? So which is again a problem. They should have referred to the study, and we can again,
Well, that
yeah,
again, we
but
can.
we can move on.
We're
I hear you.
sure. I
Yes.
understand the quibbles, but
Yeah.
so I'm just trying to say what trying to do now is saying, okay, regardless of of the quibbles with the data, what can we agree on is like a minimum?
Yeah.
Where can we agree with that as a minimum? So we agree that those cancer data registries exist. We agree that they did in fact have instances. Maybe the Globocon messed up. Maybe they didn't. We can discuss. That's a whole separate point. But these 11 registries did record a certain amount of deaths. They cover 3% of India. They uh there's different ways we can
Uh,
extrapolate.
I would still caution because I've looked at the summary of the study, not the entirety, so I'm not sure if they have attached the raw data in there. If you would like go to the annexure and see if they have attached raw data, because they have clearly mentioned in the 28 registries that they were not able to figure out mortality estimates, that they were not able to record mortality data. So if this study is using the same registries from the 28 registries, I would still do like a
It's
double check, you know.
they're not using the 28 registries. They only had 11 registries. Here's my understanding. My
But maybe it
understanding
could
is
be a different registry. It's not the
yeah.
same one. They are probably using a different registry. Okay.
So my understanding is that these registries are the ones that followed the patients more closely and were able to get mortality data because of that. So they follow. So it's not just that they recorded incidents like many other registries do, but don't have mortality data. They were able to more closely follow the patients in those registries and get a clear picture on mortality. Then
Okay.
my understanding is what Globocon does is they use that to get a mortality incidence to mortality ratio
Yeah.
that they model, and then they go to the broader registries that don't have the mortality data. They have the incidence data, and they apply that incidence to mortality ratio to that
Yeah.
to get their estimate. Now, whether we agree with that estimate or not, even if we say it's wrong,
We still haven't covered the major problem because the incidence trend, the major burning issue, the
even if
incidence
we
trend
say it's
should come
wrong for
down.
the incidence term, let's grant
Yeah.
that there is some decline. Maybe it's 1%, 2% per year. I don't think it's every registry is going to show a 5% decline per year. That would be crazy. But
Not all of them,
no,
but
no. I
majority
know.
of them showed a decline, and only three or four registries showed an
So
incline
let's
out
see.
of 28.
So let's say there's a decline. Okay, we can add that into what I got when I did a back of the envelope calculation.
Hmm.
When I said, okay, let's just say if we assume the steady state rate, the mortality rate is 51%. If we include from previous years that wasn't included in there for a steady state rate, that would be about 0.6. So 60% if we included previous year deaths, a little bump to that. And then we extrapolate that to all of India from the 28 registries, we get approximately 30,000 deaths a year. Now that's a lot lower than 80,000 deaths that was in Globicon. A lot lower.
I mean, look,
Yeah.
I said the same thing. So if you look at the estimates, which I said, it's around 70,000. You apply 50% to that 51%, you get 35,000, and you were saying 30,000, right?
Yeah.
So these are again
So
much lower than what's been
much
shipped
lower.
out
Now, what
before.
I didn't, it's a crude estimate. I didn't do an age standardized estimate.
Right.
But
I
the thing
didn't. So
is,
35,000, yeah.
yeah, but even so, like even now I can look into like, okay, well, what are the actual things when we model them across
Yeah.
different populations that we didn't have, what actually went into the model. Maybe it's higher. Okay, maybe it's not. Maybe it's higher, maybe it's not. If we say, okay, well, maybe that if we account for a decrease in trend, maybe, maybe that 30,000 deaths a year figure, maybe that goes down to 28,000 deaths a year, maybe 25,000 deaths a year. Those numbers, if you told me there were in the United States, and I have to even adjust it for population, like there would be, what would the population adjusted be? So in India, you have like what, 1.4 billion people. Um,
Yeah.
uh, so you have 1.4 billion people, and here we have like what, 350
300 million. 330, I guess.
330 million. Let's just go with
Yeah.
that. So the scale factor of 4. So if you told me, because right now we have like 3,000, if you told me we had 12, if you told me we had uh 12, so that would be equivalent of having 12,000. So if base in India, so if you told me that was uh twice the number, if you told me that we had 6 instead of 3,000, in the United States we have 6,000 deaths, that would actually convey a sense of urgency for me. Um,
Would it though? I mean, you get 40,000 deaths just from going to the gyms every year.
no, I understand, but of course that there is a benefit to
I
going
mean,
to the
people
gym that
die
doesn't.
from all sorts of
No,
reasons. That
I
doesn't mean you
understand.
vaccinate the whole population, right?
Okay, but simply pointing out that a different cause of death is higher doesn't. That's not gonna like there's a much higher cause of deaths of car crashes, but we understand that going to the gym has a utility,
I
driving a
mean, a
car
lot
has
of
a utility.
simpler things have much higher mortality. Like I said,
Yeah, but
40,000
they don't
people
have a
die of.
utility. Yeah, but they don't have a utility. There's no utility of having cervical cancer.
I think we can move to that part, the part where
Sure,
we discuss the utility
but
of the
that's
vaccine.
but that's why yeah, but that's okay. But you understand that.
Also, you would agree that 70,000 deaths is far more scarier than
Yes,
30,000
yes,
deaths.
yes. If it
Yes?
turns out, yes. So if it again, that's a point I'd have to look at the data more closely following the call to as to whether that's right or not. I do agree that if it's true that the numbers are overplayed, then I think that's important. It is still all I'm saying is it is still very plausible to have a concerning rate even with an established minimum like somewhere around 25,000, 30,000. That's still an important thing to not dismiss, and I don't think it's we should be dismissing it by pointing out, oh, there's these deaths in the gym. I don't think that's
The
analogous.
problem, the problem is it is also possible that these numbers are decreasing on their own as historical trends in many of the nations have
Wait, but I already
suggest,
included a decline into that figure. No, I agree. I agree. That's why I included. I said like, okay, let's say with the decline it goes from 30,000 to 25,000. That's fine. I understand.
Right.
That would still be so that point I subsumed into that figure. So
Okay.
what I don't want to do is I don't want to analogize that to something like deaths by going to the gym or deaths by driving a car, because there is a huge
Sure.
difference between dying but taking a risk of death by doing something that's going to benefit you immensely,
Sure.
or have a clear utility, to dying from something that doesn't give you anything out of it. Like having an
Mhm.
invasive cancer doesn't give
Yeah.
you well, having an
Yeah.
invasive cancer doesn't in and of itself give you utility. Or
Yeah. Fair.
okay. So all right, fine. So that's I think where we can hopefully agree on the death estimates. I think we can grant there may be quibbling to do with the estimates. We could grant that we would have to, pending taking a look at the further detailed data and what the modeling was on what exactly it is. That all being said, I hope we can at least agree that at minimum, even at the best case scenario, we could probably agree with what the data is on some figure that is, at least in my view, not something to just gloss over, not something to just like hand wave away. I don't think 25,000 or 30,000 deaths, even if, okay, let's say it's 25,000 from a decline, even if it is that low a year, I don't think that's something that we could just like dismiss the utility of vaccines. We would have to look at what the risks and benefits of the vaccines are to that. Like there's,
Yeah, the problem is that a lot of budget is being expended on
Mhm.
things like this, which has a much lower prevalence compared to, let's say, number of kids dying because of not enough drinking water or malnutrition. All right. India spends 1.7% of its GDP on healthcare, as opposed to US spending 20%. Right. So we have our priorities.
Yeah, we do
Uh,
spend more on of our GDP on healthcare. That is that is true. But the
We
thing
spend
is,
way too much. We
yeah,
spend way too less, right? So we have to prioritize. If people are not getting clean
go ahead.
water, and if they are dying because of things like malaria and dengue
Mhm.
and heat
Yeah,
and poor quality of water,
yeah. So I
more
agree
number of
that
deaths happening.
if
Uh,
one has a view, I mean, I suppose you could make that same case even if the numbers were 80,000 a year, even if the 80,000 figure was true, you might still be able to make that same case. Well, maybe we should just ignore it anyway because
no,
of
I'm just saying that everything has to be put in context. And when I'm
I,
saying this, I've already established that the numbers do not tally up. You've done your math. I've done my math. The
well, I'm
incidence trends, the old data,
just to be clear,
the
the numbers don't add up when granting we do a different estimation model. I haven't looked at the full GlobeCon estimation models. I
sure.
haven't looked at, I haven't replicated what they've done. I haven't tried to do that yet. I haven't like exactly, there probably would be a way to do that if we get all, if I'm sure if I talk to their statisticians, that we may have a different picture. I mean, I may come back and say, okay, well, wait a minute, really, here's why we have good reason to believe it really is 80,000. Regardless,
Okay.
regardless,
Okay.
there is a discussion to be had about the utility of vaccines, even if there are people dying from impure water, and even if the numbers are 25,000 a year. I don't think we should just, yeah, I think we hopefully can agree that there should still be a risk benefit discussion about HPV vaccination. If that is the actual figure, if the figure is that much, even if it is that much lower, and even if there are other things to worry about.
Right. I think that brings us to the second point. Do vaccines actually lower the risk of
Yeah.
cervical cancer? Right. So you
Okay.
can probably
Yes.
share your points, and then I'll add in my contention.
Okay. So that's a great place to transition. Okay, so so my view is that we have very good reason to believe that that HPV vaccination does decrease the risk of total HPV driven diseases. So, HPV driven invasive cancers. So what do I mean by that? I'm talking cervical cancer,
Hmm.
oropharyngeal cancers, vulvar cancers, and penile cancers, and anal cancers. So
Hmm.
those five cancers they all share a common denominator, which is they all have a very large HPV driven component. In fact, the most recent data, I believe, even for United States, is that even oropharyngeal cancers are not primarily caused by drinking and smoking anymore. They're primarily caused by because people stop drinking and sorry, people stop smoking from the previous days. They're primarily caused by HPV from oral sex. So the my view is that we do have that data, and it's not just from observational studies. We have that data from randomized control trials. Not, of course, randomized control trials are not typically powered to detect invasive cancers, invasive cervical cancers. They do report it. I did take contention with when you said the trials didn't report it. Every trial has to report it. It may not be the primary outcome, but they do report it. And there have been publications on follow up, on longer term follow up from those randomized to the placebo group and those randomized to the treatment group. And they have found a difference in the rates of invasive HPV-driven cancers, most of which were driven by cervical cancers. And these are follow-ups from the randomized controlled trials. I can share
Sure.
that data. And again, it's not incredibly robust hit rates, but enough to reach statistical significance and uh, enough to reach statistical significance and in the direction you would clearly expect. So what this group did, vaccination protects against invasive HPV associated cancers. What this group did is they basically noted the same thing. It said, okay, CIN34 we've tracked. They haven't tracked the um, but they haven't tracked the invasive cancers because they weren't powered to do that. But what we can do is we can look at several different trials that have been done, and we can do a follow-up of these vaccination trial cohorts and the unvaccinated control group, and we can follow them up and see how many in each group developed invasive cervical cancer or oropharyngeal cancer um, or any of these groups. And what they have found was in the HPV vaccinated women, the ones who were randomized to HPV vaccine, they did not find any invasive cervical, vulvar, oropharyngeal, or other HPV cancers. But in the non-HPV vaccinated group, the women who were randomized to not receive the vaccine, they found 8 invasive cervical cancers, 1 invasive vulvar, 1 invasive oropharyngeal, for a total of 10. Now, so adjusted for the population in each group, you would expect there to be a rate of around 5 and 10. The actual observed rate, if it was random, if there was no effect from the vaccine on invasive HPV-driven cancers, you would expect the rates to be 5 and 10. What you actually observe is 0 and 10. That does reach a statistically significant difference in vaccine efficacy as the 95% confidence interval does not cross 0. And another way of saying that is if you expect 5 and 10 and you get 0 and 10, you can flip the coin. And not an exact analogy, but you can flip a coin 5 times and get heads every time. It's possible, but it's only around 3% chance of that happening. So I think this is as far as randomized control trials, this is at least some data to move one's credence that actually HPV vaccination does not just prevent CIN2 and CIN3, because when you follow the data further and you look at those trials that were randomized and you look at invasive cancers, HPV-driven cancers, you actually do see a difference there too. Now you can ask about, well, what is the actual absolute risk reduction? How much of a difference that is? That's a separate question. We can get into that, but I think at least at the level of randomized controlled trials, I don't think it's accurate to say that there's no data from randomized controlled trials that indicates that HPV vaccination doesn't do anything. It does do something, and that data does come from data from randomized controlled trials on long-term follow-up, and ones that weren't even powered to begin with to detect it, and yet they're still statistically significant when they're looked at in follow-up. If you were to pool more trials, I'm sure you'd see more, but there is something. It's not that there's nothing from the randomized control trials. So hopefully we can agree that it's not accurate to say all of the data is just observational in terms of whether it makes any difference. In terms of whether it makes any difference, there is data that we can draw from randomized controlled trials for invasive cervical cancers. Do we agree on that?
Right. I have a few questions here.
Okay.
All right. So you're saying that this was randomized study, right?
It was a follow-up from the randomized study.
Right.
Yeah.
And the follow-up period was 7 years.
Okay.
Is my
Yes,
understanding
past the
correct?
follow-up, yes. For the corresponding
7 years. And then they have mentioned person years. For
yes.
HPV vaccinated women at 65, 657,
Yep.
it's 124. So it basically corresponds to that non-HPV vaccinated women were followed for roughly twice the amount of period.
No. It's that the groups there was about double the number of individuals. That's why you get double the person rate, because there were 9,529 people who got the vaccine and
Mhm. Okay.
17,838. That's why you
Okay,
see
got
almost a
it. Got
double
it. That's
rate.
okay. So now here's my question. So when somebody gets, let's say, an HPV infection,
Mhm.
what's the corresponding time for that person to get, let's say, progress to a SIN2 or a SIN3?
That varies. It's on the order of years.
Roughly,
It
roughly
takes
7 to 8 years, as per the IARC.
Yeah, well, that's a median or a mean. There's a range. And in fact,
Yeah, it's like a
this is one
median,
of my
median. Yeah.
issues. This is one of my issues with these studies is you're missing most of the benefit. Is that if and in fact when you extend the period, in fact when I can show you that when you go out further and further and you do follow-ups further and further, the benefit gets greater precisely because of that. Because there is a lag time. Uh,
Right. So
mhm.
can we safely can we agree to the number? Like how much time does it take from, let's say, contacting an HPV infection to reaching, let's say, a SIN3 progression? You
I
give
can
me a
look. I don't
reasonable
have the
number.
exact number. I can just look that up. Average
Yeah,
time
sure.
to from
You
eight.
can also look at how much time does it take from SIN3 to, let's say, cervical cancer
Sure, sure.
progression.
Yes. I
Yeah.
see. Okay, I see around like 9.4 years where 90%
Right.
infections cleared. Okay, yes. 9 point
And how much time does it take from SIN3 to, let's say, a cervical cancer progression?
time from CIN3 to invasive can take 10 to 20 years
Right.
on
So
average. Yeah.
assuming that it takes
There's
10
there's a
years.
bell curve, but yes.
Yeah. So basically, you need to have a study, at least 20 years of follow-up, if you are giving it to young girls
Mhm.
between a median age of 14 to 19 years.
So I don't think so there's where I don't think that follows. So I think that would be better. I think it would be better. I agree there. I don't think you need it. And I can tell you why. So you can still detect if you have a robust enough study, you can still detect because remember these it's not the case that in every patient it's going to take that amount of time. There is a subset of patients where it takes substantially lower for each stage of those progressions. And that's really what this is picking up. Now you can argue maybe the rest are different. I can address that. There's data we have that go to there's follow-up data, observational data that go basically to almost 20 years. I think it goes to 18 years.
I mean,
And
we can cover that separately.
no, that's fine. But
Yeah,
so
we, we,
so
we
I
can
just
cover the
I can put a
Swedish registry
but
separately. I
even
mean, we
if we
can we can
didn't have
talk about
that, no,
this.
I get it. But even if we didn't have that, I don't think we can hand wave away this result. I don't think
Yeah.
mere
So I really don't think that in the follow-up period, like if you see, there's a clear difference between the median age of the non-vaccinated versus vaccinated recipients, because if you see the vaccinated recipients, they're in the age group of 14 to 17, right? And
uh
the non-vaccinated participants are 14 to 19. So that's a 2 year difference, which means that these participants received additional 2 years of follow-up.
wait, hold on.
Um,
Number of incidences have we've seen images of cancer cluster randomized together. 14 to 17-year-old female HPV or HPV vaccine recipients, and non-HPV vaccinated, uh, originally 14 to 19-year-old women. Uh, Wait, I don't see how that translates. That doesn't mean they have different degrees of different durations of follow-up. That means that at best, there's 2 years because it's 14 to 17 and 14 to 19. Uh, that best that means there's 2 years later. Now,
yeah.
I
So,
don't
so
think
women
that's
are
now
slightly
I
more
definitely
older.
don't think that's going to make the difference. And I could
I'm saying women are slightly more older in the non-vaccinated cohort.
yes, I
Let's say
think
right there, 14 to 17 versus 14 to 19. So women are slightly more older in the non-vaccinated cohort.
yes, and there's and we
Yes,
and if
and
I
and
no, I
as
hear
and,
yeah.
and there's a clear pattern we've seen that
Mhm.
the progression happens more rapidly as you age. I mean, cervical cancer probably takes years before you contact it, like you've confirmed it yourself.
So they had it so
But
that there was let's just what so I'm sure they've thought of this. In fact, they did. So age aligned um let me just read this. Countrywide Finnish cancer-based registry followed up all of the above mentioned cluster and individually randomized cohorts for a comparable up to 7-year time periods between June 2007 and December 2015, resulted in 65,656 and 12,124 240 follow-up years for HPV vaccinated and non-vaccinated women. Thus, of the 866 plus 2,465 originally 16 to 7-year-old HPV vaccinated and the 15,665 18 19-year-old vaccinated women were of the same age during follow-up. So there are ways of having censoring time points such that you control for that. That you would make sure everyone is the same age during follow-up, that you don't have one group that is having a follow-up time in which they're of a later age than the other. And even in the observational data, they did not, that wasn't missed on them. And including the follow-up observational data as well.
Actually, I have multiple points of contention on
Okay.
the observational data. And the observational
That's
data,
fine.
it is exactly what they did. The women who were vaccinated, they were much younger, and they compared them to women who were much older. So the
At
follow-up
the
time
time,
for women,
at the time of vaccination, or just are you saying that
yeah,
they
yeah, yeah, at the time of vaccination, there's a lot of problems.
but that's different than comparing them at different ages. Like you can say, okay, well, was here's someone who you can take a cohort who is vaccinated earlier at the time, so less 17 years old, but we make sure we follow them till their 30th birthday or till their 34th birthday. And so we follow everyone and we make sure everyone gets to that birthday and say,
Yeah,
and
they
so
didn't do
that
that.
way, what?
They didn't do that.
Yeah, they did.
They did not do that.
They
Yeah,
did.
they didn't do that. What they did was they followed people for 20 years. And so the people who were vaccinated, they were
Mhm.
younger girls, and the women who were also in the group were slightly more older. So by the time the observation period got over, the non-vaccinated women were obviously of older age compared to the
Okay, so
women.
let's set the goalposts. If I show you a study where they did do that, if I show you a study where they did follow them and have or an age adjustment to ensure that was taken account for, would that change your view?
I mean, look, it will tell me, yes, it does something. And then again, there are other studies which would also suggest that, if you show me a randomized control trial, placebo-controlled randomized control trial, sure. And then we'll also have to check how effective they are, because then you also have to calculate the NNT, and then
I
you also have
Oh,
to
sure,
check.
sure. So just to start then, because I find it like so this data is suggesting that the methodology that they did, in my understanding, is that they didn't just follow different age girls with that two different age gap to by the same amount of period. They did follow them to the same by the end of the follow period, they were all the same age. So and this is like a known, my understanding is this a known issue. So if it turns out that's
I
correct,
mean, if you can share me this study, I'd love to
yeah,
take a look at it myself later
yes,
on. Yeah.
yeah. I'll share that with you. But provided that, and also I wouldn't. Also, the other thing is for 2 years difference to make a difference between an observation of 5 to 10 to 0 to 10, even that sounds like a stretch. If you were to tell me like there's a 10-year difference or even a 5-year difference, maybe. But to say that because that included 18 and 19-year-olds, where the other one was 14 and 17 at the time, even that is a stretch. I find that very hard to believe as well.
No, I get it. Fair point. But
Yeah.
like I said, so I've not gone through the study.
Okay.
I'll go through the study. I'll check what they have done. What's the follow-up period? Um, my major points of contention are very simple for these studies. Most of the studies uh, do not standardize basis age. Second, most of them do not have cervical cancer as endpoints. Probably this one has. I haven't checked it.
Yep.
Then they are not placebo-controlled randomized controlled trial. So this one is,
This one, yeah.
it's a
This
again,
one
this
is
is
at
wait,
least
wait,
those
wait.
two.
This is a Finnish cancer registry. This is not randomized
Of the
controlled trial.
of no 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 of the randomized control trials. So they use the Finnish cancer registry to
Okay.
get the ones who are in the randomized control trials and randomized to different groups.
Could you
Yeah.
what's the
Your
base
popul
study?
Yeah, population-based cancer registry follow-up of two Finnish vaccination trial cohorts and unvaccination control cohorts has provided substantial protective effect. HPV
This
vaccination
is
in
not a
4 and
randomized
5.
control trial.
Yes, it is. Yes, it 4 and 5.
No, this is not a randomized control trial.
No, this is a follow-up of the patients who were in the randomized control trials.
Can you show me where it says that?
Yes, here.
Because this looks like a
So it
registry.
says our data, so it's coming from a registry of the patients in the randomized control trials. So it starts our
Our
data
data stemming from randomized
yes.
cohorts.
Randomized, yeah. So it's a cohort of those who were in the randomized control trial. Here, look. If you look at the methods, the first two cohorts were recruited in 2002 to Future 2. We agree Future is a randomized control trial, right? You know it is.
Right, but they didn't test for the
Recruited.
cervical cancer endpoints. They
Wait,
tested
but
for 2 and 3.
yes, but that's the point of this study. This study
And
focuses.
these studies were so the future studies again. The future studies were not compared with placebo. They used aluminum adjuvant in one of the studies, and you used previous versions of the vaccine in other studies. They were not placebo controlled,
Okay, well
randomized controlled.
okay, well we can discuss that objection. We can and so I agree with that. There is a different one that did use saline that did not, or at least did not use aluminum, which was
They didn't. So none of the future trials were placebo controlled, randomized
no, no,
controlled trials. They
no.
were using
It had a control that had aluminum. Now, whether that makes a
right.
difference in efficacy, I always hear about it as far as safety. I've never
I
heard
mean,
that
I,
make
I
it in
really don't
efficacy.
understand why would you use aluminum adjuvant?
We
Why
can
not
talk about
just
that. I'm happy to discuss
give
why.
them something, just
So
give
I do
them
have
water,
I
food,
do
no.
have so I do have an answer for that. I do have a reason.
Okay,
That may take a bit more time than we have, but I'm happy to go through that. Why you would have an aluminum adjunct in there. But
okay.
before we discuss that, I do want to at least establish what was done before we jump to a point of like, oh well, I don't like that because of this, like because you're saying they're not from randomized controlled trials. I just want to establish that they were at least.
Yeah,
Now,
I
whether
mean,
you have an issue with the
placebo-controlled
control,
randomized controlled trials. Yeah,
whether you have an issue with the control having aluminum or not is a separate point. Let's just get one thing at a time. So,
sure.
first two cohorts were recruited in 2002 to 2005 to Future 2 and Phase 3 trial and Patricia. So, we agree that those are randomized controlled trials, presumably.
Not placebo-controlled. Yeah,
Okay, so wait. So we agree that they were randomized controlled trials that had aluminum in or at least one of them, at least Future.
yeah.
The
One
H
of them. Yes, one of them.
the
Yes.
018 the 018 did not have aluminum in it, is to my
That was a comparison with earlier version of the vaccine.
I understand.
Yeah.
So we can now whether that aluminum in it makes a difference to if only you had less aluminum, you get zero HPV and zero cervical cancers. We can discuss that. I think that's
But I'm
crazy.
not saying that. But the thing is, look,
No, I
I'm not
understand the
saying
broad
that.
point of
But
why you would do that. That's a
historically,
separate.
pharmaceutical companies have done so much shit. You're probably aware of what they did in Africa, right? With
Listen,
the drug.
I
Yeah. So I'm just saying that everything matters, and it's fair for me to ask a question. I can question
you
this
can ask
because
you could yeah you can
yeah,
ask that, but my
I mean,
response.
I can demand a better study. If you're going out there and telling me, hey,
Wait,
my
but
vaccines work, I would say, why don't you use the
wait, hold
highest
on.
level of evidence, which is do a
So
placebo-controlled, randomized
and
controlled
there's a
trial.
reason why
And
there are good reasons why that was done. But regardless, even if it wasn't a good reason, here's the important point. Epistemically, even if it wasn't a good reason, this is not the sort of flaw in the trial that I would be able to dismiss the trial efficacy over. At best,
I'm not dismissing the
yeah.
trial. I'm just
Okay.
saying that I would not put this trial in, let's say, a sort A kind of a classification. I'd say this is like a sort B.
Okay, we can discuss that, but regardless, the
And
efficacy,
this
I
was
think
also a funded study. So there's that.
well, that's a whole okay, well, wait a minute.
Yeah, like I
We're
said, I
jumping
have
from
reasons to put it
wait,
in
but
sort
we're
B,
jumping from a
I
whole
have
bunch of
reasons to put
different
it in sort B.
okay, so we're okay. I hear you. We're jumping from a whole bunch of different criticism. We jumped from this wasn't randomized to it was randomized, but I didn't like the placebo has an issue to maybe the aluminum in the placebo didn't affect it, but I still think it should be have done better. To it was funded by the pharmaceutical company. We can talk about all of these things, but let's just go one
Sure,
by one and how much each one affects the inference, at least to
sure,
efficacy.
sure.
So we agree. Okay, we recruited the two cohorts. And they're describing the cohorts that they were in future two, the phase 3 trial and the Patricia trial, HPV 16-18 vaccine phase 3 trial, continued in Finland as a passive long-term follow-up study. So we agree that the participants of the future two and Patricia trials were randomized control trials. Now, we can talk about whether the placebo was good enough for you or not. Well, okay. But we agree at the baseline that the claim that they weren't randomized control trials is not true. They were randomized control trials.
Okay.
We agree on
I mean,
that.
I've told you my objections.
No, no,
If
I
we are
understand.
still
Wait, but I'm
moving
just trying
past
to go
those
through one
objections,
issue
that's
at a
fine.
time. Yeah, I understand what your objections are gonna be. But
Yeah.
if we can't agree, but you also told one of your objections right now was that this wasn't a randomized control trial, and I'm saying it was. So
No,
one,
I wasn't saying this wasn't a randomized controlled trial. I was like, I just want to know if this was randomized
okay.
controlled trial.
So we agree it was a
And then, yeah,
randomized.
it is a randomized controlled trial, but
Okay.
it was not randomized against a placebo group.
Okay.
It was randomized against
Against
like a
aluminum, a
aluminum.
solution with
Yeah.
aluminum adjunct and,
Yes.
and several
Yes.
preservative items. Okay, we agree on that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Trial cohorts comprise, okay, now it has 866 and 265 HPV 611, 16 and 18, and HPV 16 and 18 vaccinated, originally 16 to 70-year-old Finnish women. Concomitantly, 15,665 unvaccinated 18 19-year-old women from adjacent birth cohorts not eligible to the clinical phase 3 trials were enrolled to a passive comparison cohort. In addition, in 2007, 8, 16, 6, 1, 198, so 8, 6, 198 HPV 6, 8, 18 vaccinated, and 2,173 Hep B virus vaccinated 14 to 15-year-old women, not cross-vaccinated against HPV 16, 18, but they did get some vaccine. They just didn't get the HPV vaccine, were enrolled in 2007 to a community randomized phase 4 trial on the impact of the gender neutral versus girls only vaccination strategies. Now, age aligned countrywide Finnish cancer registry based follow up of all the above mentioned cluster and or individually randomized cohorts for comparable up to 7-year time periods between June. So they did say that their comparison was age aligned.
Age
Age,
aligned. Yeah.
yes, age aligned countrywide Finnish
Not
cancer registry
age
based follow up.
adjusted. Yes. Not age
Yes.
adjusted. Yes. Age aligned is different from age
Yes,
adjusted.
it's even better. It's even stronger because they're saying the comparison is the same at the same age.
Okay. Fine.
It's even
Let's
stronger than age adjusted.
okay. Okay.
7-year time periods between June 2007 and December 2015, and it resulted in this many and this many follow-up years. So they're multiplying the people by the years to get the person years for HPV vaccinated and non-HPV vaccinated women. So thus the figure originally 16 to 17-year-old HPV vaccinated and 15,665 18 19-year-old unvaccinated women were of the same age during follow-up. So at the point of follow-up, the comparisons were not of different ages. So hopefully we agree that it's not the case that they're looking at 2-year differences in age. They compare, at least what they're saying is that they were of the same age when they did the comparison. And what they find is, again, randomly, if you were to just look at these individuals, you would expect 5 and 10 because you have about half the amount of person years, even though they were followed for the same, because you have to have around half the people, around half of here compared to here, and 10, and you would expect 5 and 10 then. If it didn't do anything, if it did nothing, and if so, there's at the very least we can say, there's a difference between what we expect and what we observe. We expect 5 and 10. We observe a straight 0 in the ones who got the vaccine compared to those who did not get the vaccine. Now, I can't explain that with aluminum. I don't think having any amount of aluminum, less aluminum is going to protect you from HPV. It seems like this is evidence, maybe not the best case evidence. There's always ways to improve it. It seems like this is evidence that that HPV vaccination at least does something. Again, you can flip a coin 5 times and get heads 5 times. It's possible. It's not likely. It's about 3%. I'm going to go with the 97%. Is that fair?
Sure.
No?
No, I said, sure, let's move on.
Okay. Wait, but
Because
wait,
I haven't seen the study. I'll
okay.
tell you, because what you're looking at is a follow-up period of 7 years. So literally every other girl is still below the age of 30, right?
Okay,
And so
yes.
you can obviously go ahead and say, but why did these girls get it? I mean, yeah, I mean, it could also be due to chance. I
Well,
mean,
I already said
yeah,
it could be due to chance. It's just a very low probability that that is going to be due to chance.
precisely. And so I have to
Even
go through
below
this.
30. Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
fine, fine, fair enough. You
I
can
have to
go.
go through the study. I'll have to check. I'll have to check which cohort did they pick these other girls from, because they were not from the same cohort. They were not part of the same cohort, which was originally randomized.
Yes.
This is not the
No,
aluminum adjunct cohort, right? It's a
right,
different,
right.
completely
It's
different cohort.
in fact, I think I'm pretty sure a good amount of that cohort probably didn't even may not have even gotten aluminum then. Um,
Precisely. This is
yeah,
a different cohort
but
because the
okay.
number of girls there were
So
like,
quasi, sure. So we can say it's like we have data, we have quasi randomized data. We have it from the cohort of the received the vaccine
yes.
versus
And
the
we are
expected
comparing
vaccine.
it with a completely different cohort.
Well, I don't know if it's a complete, when you
I mean,
say
look at the
complete,
numbers, 17,838 known HPV vaccinated. Look at the original randomized control trial. How many participants there?
yeah. So we have 9,500 and
Now
at
go
least
up,
in the
go
follow.
up.
Oh, no, no, no. I
And
know. I
this is a
understand. Yes, I
vaccinated
understand what
group.
you're saying. Yes. Yes. It was from, yes,
So it's not the
it's from,
same cohort.
I
It's not the
understand.
same cohort.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
from a background. Yes, look, you're getting expected background rates. So I agree. It would have been better if we can get because
It's
if
not from the same cohort, you know?
yes,
I mean, and again, it raises suspicion, or actually raises
I don't.
questions. Why did you not follow up from the same cohort which got the aluminum?
So after, yeah,
Yeah.
I think that is a probably even better reason because in those trials, if I'm not mistaken, during the extended follow-up period, didn't the ones who are unvaccinated get vaccinated?
Okay, again,
Yeah, so
I
that's
don't
that.
have
So then
insight into that.
you wouldn't be comparing vaccinated to unvaccinated then. So then you have even better reason to have to just. But the point is, I think the point is
Yeah,
really
this
simple.
is like they're comparing two different
Yeah,
cohorts.
yeah, yeah,
This is
but
not the
you're.
original
I don't think
randomized
it's
cohort.
no, no. I understand, but I think it's
And so
fair.
I have to look at the background of who these girls are
Sure.
because they're not from the same cohort,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
like I said, I have my suspicions and I'd reserve them unless until I've gone through the study. I can't make those
That's fine.
assessments. But
But
I'm saying I right now I have few points which I can like tell you right away.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, the
No, no.
follow-up
So I
period,
think
the
so. I
different
think okay.
demography.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think okay. So I think it's fair to point out that that the data from the randomized controlled trials, which aren't powered to do this, but you can take the randomized controlled trials from the people who received the vaccine, and you may not be able to compare them to those who were randomized to not do it, because at the end of the period they were in the open enrollment. Generally, trials go to open enrollment where they are able to get vaccinated. So it's kind of hard to do that then. But
Yeah, but the point is this
they,
is not randomized and this is not controlled, right? So unless until you know who
well, it
these
is.
women
Wait, but well, no, it is controlled. Like you don't have
is
to be
it
randomized.
is it
Yes,
though?
yes,
Is it though? Think about
yes.
it. Think about it. Is this comparison
You
can
can take
control
issue
and
with the
randomized?
control. You can take issue with the control. It absolutely is. You don't have to have a randomized study to have a control. Observational studies have controls.
This is not controlled.
It is controlled.
How?
You know what a control is? A control is just
Yes.
the comparison group.
Yes. But is it the same comparison group
Is it the
from the
same? No, one is
original?
that's what makes no. So it's not the same group. One is an intervention group. The control group is just a
Right.
comparison group. You
So
can take
I think
issue with the
you
comparison.
have to match. So look, a control is a fair control where
Yeah.
you don't know exact. So
So you
the way
match the
I
age at
look at.
follow up, you match the characteristics. Yes, of course.
Yeah, and the reason why we have similar control group is we assume that it's going to be same kind of underlying baseline risk, and then we
Yes.
randomize, so we know that in both the groups we have similar baseline
You
risk.
can do that
In
without
this
random
case,
there are ways of doing that without randomization, but yes, I agree. Of course, I know this. Yes, I've been doing listen, I've been doing clinical trials for at least 4 years.
no, I
Uh,
know, but then is this the group? Do Are these controlled groups? Are these two groups controlled?
so my
Do these
understanding is that they were this control group is of the similar background characteristics as the ones from the
that's an
trial.
assumption. If we don't
No,
know
I don't
what the
think
baseline
I don't
characteristics
think it
are,
is an assumption. I think that's what I think at least in several characteristics is what they're saying. One of which was
they
age, which you can
they're
test
they're
in
from the
person.
same age group, but they don't know if they both the groups have
Okay,
similar
let's set
baseline
the
risk.
goalpost then. Let's just set the goalpost. You get what characteristics, if we go into these cohorts, what characteristics are you going to say, okay, there are no significant difference between the two. I accept the comparison. Or is there no set of
Well, I would have accepted if it was randomized because in that
you only
case we
accept
have
randomized then?
similar
Is
kind
that
of
wait,
baseline. Then only you can assume the baseline risks to be same. In
wait,
this
wait, wait,
case, I'm
wait,
sorry,
wait.
you don't
But
have
it's
the
not
same
wait, I
baseline
don't think
risk.
we're wait, hold on. That's not answering my question. So I understand that it would be more ideal if the comparison group was also from the trials that didn't actually get vaccinated after. I understand it would be fair to have if we had that data. Given that if that's not available and the only group from the randomized control trial is the intervention group, if the what I'm asking is, let's set the goalpost. What
Mhm.
factors are you going to accept as similar enough or not if there's no significant difference between this group and the intervention group as being a fair comparison to explain away a difference like this, so that we can say, okay, given the magnitude of the difference.
Baseline,
Yeah, I
the
understand
recruitment.
baseline characteristics. Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So what are
No, the baseline risk, the baseline risk.
yeah? So
You
what
understand how certain regions have higher baseline risk, as we've seen in the Indian registry data also.
I
Some
understand.
registries have a much higher baseline risk, some registries don't have a higher baseline risk. So if you compare, let's say, a low baseline population, you give them HPV vaccine, and
Uh-huh.
then you don't randomize them, and then you put them against, let's say, a population which has a higher baseline risk, the higher baseline risk population is going to develop cancer anyways.
I understand this
That's
concept.
my
Yes,
problem. And so
I'm
that
familiar. I'm
this is
familiar with, right. I'm familiar with this. But what I'm asking then is for a clear goalpost. I'm asking then, so because I understand what you're saying. I understand that if you compare unequal populations with unequal baseline risks, one group will be more likely to have it anyway. Are they going to be unlikely to have it by this magnitude? I don't think so, but okay, fine. We can discuss that. But what I'm asking is, okay, so what characteristics would you accept then, uh, to as a way of approximating a reasonably equivalent baseline risk? When we look at these different groups, I want to know, okay, we talked about age. You mentioned that. Turns out they were the same age
Yeah.
upon yes.
I'd look at the
Talk about
regional characteristics.
okay, regional
I look at the
characteristics. They were
regional
both
characteristics, sanitation, screening.
these were
Uh,
these were in these were Finnish groups. There,
yeah. Yeah, but still, I mean, demographics or the geography would be important
okay, so
because
if it turns out
every country
okay,
has these pockets where they have higher baseline risk and then lower baseline
so
risk.
if it turn okay, good. So if it turns
Also, the
out that we
socioeconomic background,
okay,
yes.
so if it turns out that we have that data
Yeah.
and that they're similar, then you would accept this as a fair comparison?
Um, yeah, I think maybe, yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was asking. Okay, so I have age, socioeconomic status, and regional incidence, or if there's any major regional differences.
Yeah,
Cool.
but do note that this is acceptable, but it's not ideal
I know.
because
Of course, we don't.
in an ideal scenario, you would want to have the extension, the follow up done on the same group of people because right now the new group of people, the baseline risk is
Hmm?
different from this group, right? So
I
they're not
understand the
randomized.
problem.
Yes,
The
but
problem, yeah. The problem though, it's an issue if those randomized to control group were vaccinated upon completion of the trial, because then you're comparing. then you all you would be doing is comparing
Yeah,
people
I
with,
understand the limitations. Like I
yeah,
said, I'm happy to
right.
accept, but this is
Yeah.
not ideal. I would never
I
put this in sort
Sure,
A
sure, sure.
category. You know,
I
I'll
and
still rate
again,
it as
there's
sort
lots
B.
of
Yeah.
questions and there's lots of questions in science where we don't have ideal data for, but we still have data to make an inference on. So we still have data to perform interventions on. Okay. So yeah, I'd be happy to share that with you, and I'd be happy to look into it further. Um,
Mhm.
and we can discuss and look, it might go in the other direction. It might go in directions where the HPV vaccinated group actually are the ones that they had the higher baseline risk. And then they still have zero. Could be the other way. Could be it's even more effective.
See, that's why we need a
Yeah.
randomized
Yeah,
control
yeah.
trial. It's the
Well, we
system.
don't need, okay, we don't need it. It would be better to have it. So we do, and then there's the
I mean,
question of
if you are planning to vaccinate millions of people, it would be better to have that.
no, it would be we all agree it would be better to have that data. I don't think that
Yeah.
there's it would be extremely hard to do that with the type of power you would need to get that. So CIN3, this is another point I wanted to raise. You
Mhm.
should know that CIN3 is not a cancer in name only, really. It's like it's if
Yeah,
you look at this,
I heard you. I believe that you want CIN3 to be called cancer instead of a precancer. You
it
don't want
is a
it to be like
cancer,
a
just to be clear.
fair point.
I've looked at that
Fair
under the
point. Fair
microscope.
point.
It's
Agreed with you.
histologically a cancer.
I agree with you.
It's carcinoma in situ. And by the way, in other
I agree
fields
with
of
you.
histology, just so you know, in the skin we would never do that. If
No,
we would
but
never call,
I'm saying I agree with you.
yeah,
I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying fine. If somebody is testing for CIN3, let's agree that that's cancer. Let's
yeah.
agree with that.
So we can
Sure.
there are randomized controlled trials looking at CIN3.
Yeah, and then let's look at those endpoints, and then let's also look at if those are CIN3 endpoints or those are CIN1 and 2 endpoints.
Sure, sure. We can
Okay,
split out.
then let's look at CIN3 endpoints specifically, and
Yes.
then let's see what's the power of the study, and let's see what's the NNT, and look at
Yep.
the sample size,
Sure.
and then see what's the difference the vaccines are making.
Okay. Good. I agree. And that's where we want to go to. So what we agree, what we can, so and that's why I think we could go to so
Mhm.
hopefully at this point, presumably if these things fairly check out, they may have we agree data may be imperfect, but it's not useless. That hopefully it's your view. In fact, I can ask you if it's your view. Is it your view if I ask you, like, okay, with all of this, is it your view that HPV vaccination does absolutely nothing? That there's no difference from chance? Or is it your view that it does something, but whether it does enough in absolute risk reduction terms
Yeah.
is questionable to the harms that it might cause?
Yeah, that's the it's the later. It's
Okay.
the later. I'm sure it does something, but we can't exactly quantify, and then we can't apply the risk benefit ratio to the entirety of population because there's not been a sufficiently powered study and there's not been a sufficiently long follow-up duration. Most of the studies which have been done, like I guess median period was 8 years, and one study did extended follow for I guess another 8 years. So maximum they've done is uh is what like one study, which is like 16 or 17 years. All other studies, median period 3, 4, 5, 6 years.
I think there was I think the largest one was the follow-up study of the Swedish cohort, which was 18 years median follow-up time.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that was the observational study.
Yeah. No, the
Yeah,
observer, yeah. Look, there's certain endpoints where if you're looking for
yeah,
that, it's
yeah,
very hard to do a trial. I will tell you, it is.
yeah,
You're talking about resources. If you want to
yeah,
talk about putting resources in the right place,
yeah.
it is an enormously resource intensive.
No, I get it. And that's why I said, look, because you're planning to put millions of people on these vaccines, and so the evidence should be beyond a doubt.
Okay,
Like,
I
if
don't.
I'm doubting the evidence, I'm like, not good enough.
Well,
Let's wait for some more data. And
okay. Well,
that's
that's a
a fairly
decision.
good ask because that's how I mean I'm putting something in my body and it says that hey, your ARR might be like 0.04%. I'm like,
Okay, well, we
you
can
know,
discuss the 0.04. I don't think that's the accurate figure. That should
this is
be.
based on the
I
Swedish
know, I know.
registry data that
I've
we
seen, I've
are.
seen, I've seen it. I know, and I've
Yeah.
seen how that figure comes from. I still don't think that's accurately represented. But,
Okay.
before we get to that, I don't think that all population-based interventions will need to have massive randomized controlled trials, especially if they're implausible to do for 20, 30 years in order to have that recommendation as a recommendation.
Do you believe that different population groups or the pockets exhibit different baseline risks?
Yes, I do.
Yes. And so, do you believe that even in the Indian registries, where we see clear trends in some pockets which are the incidents are inclining, where in some incidents are declining on their own? We've seen historically in the case of US, in the case of Australia, in case of many European countries, where the incidences were already on decline much before the vaccines came. In fact, in
That's a
case of
separate.
Australia,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
sorry, yeah,
So
in
that is
case
a
of
separate.
Australia, more than 50% rates of cervical cancer were down before HPV vaccines came in. I mean, US
Yes,
practically cervical cancer,
there's there's
like
multiple
it
different
went
things that
from
decrease. There's multiple different things that decrease cervical cancer. I'm not saying vaccine.
precisely. So my point is,
I'm not saying
should we
vaccination is
not
the only one.
focus
Like increased usage of condoms will decrease it. Increase.
exactly increased use of condoms, increased use of pap smears screenings, so many things, and
Yeah, yeah,
those
yeah.
numbers, like
But
we
that's
know
not.
for a fact that those things help. Like
Well, wait a
there's
minute. Do we don't
beyond
we hold on, hold on.
beyond
Wait.
doubt
Really? There's a
that
20-year
screenings help.
randomized control trial? Hold on. No, now that's where I'm going to push back. We don't have a 20, 30-year randomized control trial on condom
We
use.
have epidemiological data from the US
Wait, but
from
you said beyond a
19,
doubt was randomized control trial. Hold on.
sorry, what?
You just said we know beyond a shadow of a doubt, and you said that's why we need the randomized control trial.
No, no. What I'm saying is we have the data
We have
which says
randomized
that
control trials
cervical
for condom.
okay, allow me. I'm saying we have the data that shows a clear trend of decline in the
Uh-huh.
number of incidences of cervical cancer cases, right? So we know that there has been a decline. Now, those reasons for decline could be multifactorial, right? Probably
Uh-huh.
more use of condoms, more use of screenings, more
Right.
use of some.
But you
So
said
we
we know
know
beyond,
that,
but you just said we
yeah,
know
so
beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is something that works. And you referred to
these
there was
things
these
work.
things.
The
Well, we don't.
screening, condom,
Well, no,
whatever,
we're making some.
unless you have some extremely hidden cause
Yeah,
of
so
the incidences slowing down. In which case, I would say, okay, sure, maybe we don't have the data, but should we be spending
all I'm
more
yeah,
time
so
and money and resources on finding those?
okay, so all I'm saying, so resource allocation is a separate question. We can talk about that, but all I'm saying is that we the point is that there's certain public health interventions, and again, these things are relevant factors, but we don't have 20, 30-year randomized controlled trial data with that's powered to detect invasive cervical cancer with condom usage. We accept that that works. We accept that if you increase condom use in the
Fair enough.
population,
Fair enough.
yeah,
Doesn't have any harm.
well, yeah, there's allergic contact dermatitis. There
Okay,
is some
okay,
harm, but it's
fine. Good.
minor. But
Okay, okay.
yeah,
Sure, sure.
we've assessed that the relative harms are minor in comparison to the benefit for condoms. You
Yeah.
know, sure, okay. So you can do. The point is, you don't need. You can do that with sub ideal data. So hopefully we can agree on that for vaccines as well. There's nothing or interventions broadly. You can make inferences without the most optimal data. You can do it for condoms. You can do it for uh, you can do it for you could do
You
it for.
see, the problem with anything that you put inside the body is that they follow a very different biological pathway. And I mean,
You could do it
sure,
with
condoms
food.
probably.
We do it with food. We don't have randomized controlled
I know,
trials.
but food is not a targeted intervention. Like vaccines are targeted interventions.
Mhm.
They go in, they're
So if
attenuated
so if
viruses,
that's the
and they
case, then we can look at data comparing concordance rates with observational data and randomized controlled trials to just show that it does carry some epistemic import then. So
No, I'm not saying it doesn't do anything. I'm just
Okay.
saying if you compare the risk to benefit ratio, does it make sense to scale immunization to the whole country? Like in India, like I said, a majority of the cohorts are not even worth considering for the vaccines. Like the prevalence rate in some of the cohorts were like 5 or 6 out of 100,000. In some cohorts, it was 27, which was
So
pretty
that's a
high.
so that's a
Why
separate
don't you
so that's a
why don't
separate
you look at those cohorts and say, hey, these guys have a much higher baseline risk. Maybe let's try and vaccinate these guys and
so I
then
think
follow up.
yeah, I think we should. I think urgency of vaccination should take into account baseline prevalence. Of course, everyone
It's a
you know
fair ask. Why
yeah,
would you
no,
want
it's
to vaccinate the whole country? Doesn't make sense.
okay. So whether it applies to every single group and whether the risk benefit analysis is beneficial to certain groups, that's a separate question. All I'm saying right now, before we get to that, I'm just trying to make sure we agree that on something more fundamental, which is you can make recommendations. Some of the recommendations we make in public health, even for things, even in principle for things we put in the body, on sub-ideal data. We may be
Right.
wrong, but we can do that. We can make inferences to make
Yeah.
certain public health recommendations on data that isn't perfect. We're never going to get perfect data on everything, and
Yeah.
especially
So, yeah. Only challenge here being like, the safety of the vaccines is
that's
always
part of
going
the
to
data.
be,
Yeah, that's part of the data
again,
that
very short-term trials. And FDA's data, if you look at it, FDA itself has noted that 30% of all its approved drugs, they have major side effects post in the post approval phase, the post marketing surveillance. And that has historically happened with some of the vaccines too. And so you
that's why we have
cannot just,
post-marketing surveillance. Yes,
and that's why we have VAERS. And if you look at VAERS, if you look at the PRR, if you look at the chi square
Mhm.
values, and you see that, okay, the signals are pretty strong
Well,
for a lot of side effects,
for certain, well, we can discuss.
including paralysis,
I we can discuss.
including GBS.
So it depends on which. Well, that depends on which vaccine you're talking about.
I mean,
For
I'm
PBS.
primarily referring to HPV vaccine. I think there's around 33,000 serious AEs from the US.
SAEs in VAERS, you're
Yeah,
saying?
serious adverse
Okay.
effects, yes.
So that would have to be, and that
33,000
would have to
reported.
be followed up on. I wouldn't just look, I wouldn't just go on VAERS alone. I'm sure you're
Who's
aware.
going to do a causality study? I mean, nobody's going to do causality study, and
I've
then they'll
seen,
say, "Hey, we can't establish causality between the vaccine." Look, but there's the PRR, there's the chi-square value. It says the signal
I'm
is
not,
way more
wait,
stronger.
hold on 1 second, JC. So there, if you were just telling me about all this stuff about imperfect data, and we got and you eventually got there to this sort of a well done observational study after RCT. But but if that's the case, I'm going to want something a lot more than merely a Vera signal. Not to say that Vera signals aren't useless. They're a good starting
I mean,
point
these are
hypothesis.
actual cases,
No, I
like
understand,
people don't
but you would
just
want
go out
to.
there and, like this is not
You
like
would
some
want
sort of a negative feedback you put after having a bad customer service.
okay. So we can, okay, but the follow up analysis of
Mhm.
of establishing causality or not is what I'm going to be interested in seeing from the VAERS from the initial VAERS signals. I'm not going to look at a VAERS spike and say,
Yeah,
okay,
I get it, but
yeah.
who's going to do that? Like who
Oh,
will
there are.
do the
I'm
signal
sure I've seen that happen with many
analysis?
vaccines, and they've done it for GBS. I've seen it.
Yeah. And
And
how
they've done
long
it
does
for
it
others.
usually take? And what's the
Okay, so
incentive for people to
those
do
are
that?
things. So those are things we can discuss. We're jumping a little ahead on the sequence of
Okay.
things we were going to talk about. But all I'm
Okay.
saying, I'm just making a more. We can talk about all these other things, but I'm just making a more fundamental point that
Sure.
benefits. Okay, there are benefits, there are risks, and with those benefits and risks, there are different levels of evidence for each. We don't need perfect evidence to believe in benefits. We don't need perfect evidence to believe in risks either.
Sure.
Okay, we don't have a randomized control trial for 20 years to talk about the risks of vaccines. Yet we believe there are some risks. Okay, so we can we do have to make use of observational data for both of these things. Uh, So we shouldn't have any inconsistency. We shouldn't be demanding the highest standard of evidence for vaccine benefits, but then believing all these horrible side effects based on, some just bears alone, right? That should
Yeah, only the problem is the incentives are different. So you do have to like if somebody like even 1 out of 100 cases, that's a lot. You're getting
one
my
out of
point because
one out of
it's a matter
100
of
cases for
like if the vaccine was neutral, if the vaccine did not have any negative side effects, then I'd be okay
yeah,
to go ahead with, let's say, less ideal data for benefits
yeah.
if it was neutral. If it
Yeah,
was
I
water,
understand.
I can have, like, you getting my point. But
Right,
if
no,
even if
I
there's a
understand. I understand the point, but the point I'm making is that that's a decision making. Before we get to decision making process of recommending or not, I mean,
okay,
I'm just saying in terms of what we believe, remember, because the reason we're believing vaccination has side effects is because of suboptimal data. Like we have, especially when you're talking about things like paralysis and GBS, we don't have good data from randomized controlled trials to statistically significantly
the
say that
signals are pretty strong.
in bears, not in the randomized controlled trials, right?
Yeah, but
Okay,
look, no incentive to do randomized control trial. A
I under
company can spend millions on a
no, no, I
randomized
understand.
control
I
trial
understand
to
this
show benefit
explanations.
because
I
it
understand
makes
you have
money when it sells vaccines,
JC. I
but it
understand you
has
have.
no incentive to
I
conduct a
understand.
randomized control trial
Okay,
to show their
I get
vaccine
it. I
has
get it. I
effect.
get it. I get it. There's reasons why we don't have that. All I'm saying is
Yeah,
that we still don't have that, and the mere fact that we don't have that is not reason for us to say that we should just dismiss the possibility of those things happening. If that's true, then we shouldn't do that for the benefits either. Now, whether we make a
agree.
decision,
I,
whether we make a decision, so we're gonna make we have to assess with the best evidence we have what the benefits are and what the risks are.
sure.
What is the absolute risk reduction of cervical cancer? We're probably going to use observational data for that, and we're going to probably extrapolate as well because here's the biggest issue, and we can discuss the cohort, the Swedish cohort. So the Swedish cohort, it published the one published in NEJM. They when what they did, first of all, before we even do that, if we look at the peaks, um, of where you would get the biggest benefit, invasive cervical cancer peaks around, it depends on which part of the world you're looking at, but it peaks way before these studies, where they followed these patients toward. The world overall, somewhere between 50 and 60, and there's still cases going outward. The uh, based on different indexes of HDI, it'll be maybe anywhere from 40 to around 68 or something. But the point being is that the study duration, and the follow-up age in the initial was just to the 31st birthday in the one published in NEJM in the Swedish cohort. And so whatever benefit there is, it's going to be very minimal compared at that time frame. Most of invasive cervical cancer happens way later than the Swedish cohort followed.
Yeah, but
So,
that does not mean that those benefits are observed. We don't know that
oh
because we
yes,
don't
and that's
have.
why that's why to make a projection, it's good to have follow-up data from that, which we do have.
If you had progressive risk
Yes.
reductions, then
Yes.
sure. We don't have
Okay, that's
progressive
what I want
risk.
to show you. Yes. That's what
Yeah,
I want to show you.
sure.
What I want to show you is that as we follow that cohort over time, even after this, when we look at each of these groups, the absolute risk reduction from the initial study to the follow-up has increased over time.
Sure.
Okay. So when we look at the incidence, and we can, and I believe this is how you calculated the 0.04 of the absolute risk reduction, is
Yeah.
in the first study, the cumulative incidence among unvaccinated women, let's see what the
94
incidence
minus
was.
47. Yeah.
Yeah, 47 cases of vaccine, 47 per 100,000 by 30 age. So they stopped at 30 by the 31st birthday is the cutoff.
Yeah.
Among women who initiated vaccination, between 17 and 30 years, the cumulative incidence is 54. So that's 54. And it was 90 and an unvaccinated 94 per 100,000. So when you calculated the 0.04, was that the 54 to 94? It was just all vaccinated? No, sorry, was it the 47 to 94?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So 47. So we have different groups. We have the unvaccinated, we have vaccinated prior to 17 years of age, we have vaccinated between 17 and 30. And then we had the overall. So what I want to show you is that across these different groups at different time points in the follow-up, they all increase in the absolute risk reduction on the extended follow-up. So the absolute difference here, 94 to 47 per 100,000. So 94 to 47. That's 47 per 100,000. That's the 0.04%.
Yeah, yeah.
And then 94, and then among this other group, the one prior to 17, that was 94 minus 4, so 90. That was 90 per 100,000, or 0.09. That was the absolute risk reduction for that group. And for the one vaccinated 17 to 30 years, that was 94 minus 54, so 40 or 0.04 percent. Now, that's where they were by the 30 year. Since that time, there was another publication that did an extended follow-up of this cohort, published in 2026 in January. It took that same cohort and followed them for an additional 4 years and for the one under 17, and they compared them at 34. They compared all groups at 34, and then they compared the two other groups at 38. And so we can go through those same incidence rates.
Yeah.
And we find that when we do the same absolute risk reduction, we see those extra years show an increased benefit in the absolute risk reduction. So when everyone was by 34 years of age, the cumulative incidence was 30, 100, and 180 per 100 among participants vaccinated before 17 years of age, those vaccinated after, and unvaccinated women. So if we look at the difference, so 180 minus 30, that's 150 per 100,000 in the below 17 cohort, which is 0.15, which was higher than 0.09.
Can you zoom this? Can you zoom it? Can you zoom in a little bit?
Yeah. Can you see? You see it now?
Is it the same group that did the follow-up?
It's the same group.
Okay, 1 second. Let me just read this. Okay.
It's the same Swedish cohort. They just it was an extended follow-up of that cohort. Okay.
Okay.
So when we look at each of those different groups, because remember, there were several different groups. This is the initial study. There were several different groups. So when we did and if we go group by group, the extended follow-up shows higher absolute risk reductions in invasive cervical cancer. So we just showed that with the ones who were vaccinated before 17, because the initial absolute risk reduction was 0.09. The follow-up was 0.15. Now we go to those who were vaccinated after 17. So in the initial one, among those who had initiated vaccination 17 to 30, the cumulative was 54. So that's 94 minus 54. That would be 0.04 or 40 per 100,000. In the extended follow-up, it was 100. So that would be 180 minus 100, which is 80, which is double the absolute risk reduction. So those vaccinated 17 to 30 had an absolute risk reduction of 0.08, not 0.04.
Okay. Can you just tell me, because this is the same cohort, right?
Yes.
At what points were they tested? And were there any possible confounding factors? Like, did some of these women start some sort of a therapy or something?
Yeah, so my understand yeah, so yeah, I'll send this to you.
Yeah,
This is the
because
same group.
I probably think if there's a continuous risk reduction, they are definitely being tested at a certain point of time. And after the initial testing, there's a good chance that some of them might have started some therapy or something, right? So there's confounders
Well,
which
it's
could
well, hold
definitely
on.
creep in.
I
So
don't
I would
need
love to have a look at
wait,
it.
once they're diagnosed with cervical cancer, they get censored out. That was part of the protocol for both of
Yeah,
those.
I'd love to look at it.
Yeah,
I
I'm
haven't
happy to.
seen this follow-up study.
Yeah, so I'm going to send this to you. But I just
Sure.
want to. So, but okay, it's fair to say, like, listen, I want to look at the study more. I haven't looked at it before.
Yeah.
But what I would want to show you is, by the way, this is not like anything new. Like absolute risk reduction of an intervention across broadly across interventions. This is something I want you to know about absolute risk reduction because you know you make a charge against people by being misleading with statistics.
Now, I'll
But
tell you my problem, okay? So again, look, absolute risk reduction is fine as long as there's no net negative harm.
no, I
Okay, the
understand.
problem with ARR, and especially in the case of vaccine, is that you have to give it to 100,000 people. You don't know who's going to get benefited by it. Like you have to give it to
So
100,000
wait, but
people,
this
and the
is
N94 vaccines is 2,200 in this case, like based on purely
I
this.
get the risk benefit analysis. I get the importance of risk
Yeah,
benefit
so I'm
analysis,
saying you
absolute
have
risk
to give
benefit.
it to
Yeah,
2,000 people, and you don't know which one of them will actually get benefited, which one
I
is at a high risk. And there's also then a chance of harm. There are
okay.
stronger signals for multiple things, right? So I'm saying that
Wait.
you can't.
Hold on. I'm not just saying, oh, the absolute risk reduction is going to be better, so it automatically outweighs the harms. I'm not saying that. What I
Yeah,
am, we can discuss that. I do think it eventually does, but the point I'm making is a much more simple point. The point I'm making is absolute risk reductions in not just vaccines, but medicines even are almost always understated benefits. And the reason, because, and you'll find this trend broadly, absolute risk reductions are a time sensitive statistic.
right.
It
So
depends
you
on
would have
several things.
definitely, yeah, you would have definitely seen the DPPO study, right?
Which study are you referring to?
The diabetes prevention program, where they compared metformin with lifestyle interventions.
Sure.
uh, right? And then the very recent study which they did, it was the like I think the study came out last week, which was about the GLP-1 discontinuation. All right. The point is not that the risks always like even in the case of statins, like this is a classic assumption here that with longitudinal time period, the ARR kind of goes up. And unfortunately, we haven't seen that. There's a lot of heterogeneity. We haven't seen that consistently increasing, even in case of
Broadly,
statins.
so my position is broadly, not every time, but broadly, that is the general trend.
Actually, that's what I'm saying broadly, but we haven't seen in long-term follow-up ARR going up,
Yes, so
right?
that's what I'm
In
saying is
certain
broadly
cases, in certain studies, but not every time.
okay. Yes, I agree that not every time, and there's
In
but
fact,
okay,
for a
well,
lot of drugs,
hold
there
on.
was this study on SGLT2 inhibitors. They had to shut down that study
I
because more
agree
people were
there's
getting
try I
harmed
agree
on a
there's inter
longitudinal time frame.
JC, I agree that there are interventions that fail. I agree there are interventions where the ARR doesn't eventually go up over time. I'm making a I didn't make an all-encompassing absolute point. I just made a point
Right.
about the broad expectation most of the time in an intervention that has a time cumulative risk has a time cumulative increasing ARR. You can make the opposite point saying, okay, well, in certain interventions, the absolute harm is time sensitive too, and that may increase over time as well. In vaccinations, it's a little bit harder to make that because most of the risk is front loaded. There are some things that happen over time, but most of the risk happens within 14 days of receiving the dose. There are some things that happen, but for things to happen 20, 30 years after, it's a lot lower of a chance of happening than in the front loaded first 14 days of receiving a
Sure.
vaccine. So the point I'm making here is just that a lot of people say they get a study like this initial study, and they say, oh, look, here is the absolute risk reduction. Look how low it is, without saying, this is the absolute risk reduction over this many years, which is really what they should be saying. They should, because that's what it actually is. That is not giving you, now we may not know if it goes up or not, but this number, the number of 0.045 or 0.04 whatever, 0.043, that is not giving you the expected lifetime benefit. That is giving
Actually,
you,
it was 0.047, 0.045.
yeah.
And then now with the extended follow-up, and again, like I said, there must be some sort of confounding, or even if there is not, I'll have to look at it because this is,
Wait, but
like I said,
I don't know why would there be there's okay, well we can discuss whether you think whether there's a confounder to explain this or not, but even if you looked at the original, I mean, look,
yeah,
you can look at age at follow-up, and if we just drew the line between the two groups, you can see the absolute risk reduction increasing at each follow-up point. So look at the Kaplan-Meier curve. I mean, sorry, look at this incidence curve. If I
but this
drew a
also
line,
has to do that the risk kind of goes up with age.
yes, that's in fact that's precisely why that is one of the biggest reasons why that's happening. It's not just that and that's not the only reason. It's one reason is it goes up with age, but the other reason is it's a cumulative risk. If we look back to those risks that going up with age,
Yeah,
yes, it does go up with age, but it doesn't go up and then go down. It goes up and it kind of lingers. It goes
right.
up and it plateaus off. So the all of this area under the curve is a cumulative risk. The area might be a little bit less over here because it plateaus down, but all of
Mhm.
those years are still important where the risk is cumulative. The two reasons ARR, and you can even see that in
And
the
see, the problem with that, the AUC, the one that you showed us, it
yeah.
really does that follow-up for 90 years.
No,
And
that's
I'm
right,
not too
but
sure.
that's I agree, but that's why it's missing out on so much of the benefit. So the point here is
Because not everybody ends up living to 90, and so you would
I'm
always
not
have,
suggesting we should always go to
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think it's fair to
I,
approximate to
I
the
I would I would say that the cumulative risk keeps on going up. It's just that the reason it looks like it plateaus is because there's a lot of how do you say, like a lot of people just
the
look at the
cumulative.
because you're talking about 70s and
This is
80s and
not, just to
90s.
be clear, this is not this graph is not cumulative risk. This graph is the risk at each age group. So yes, cumulative risk goes up. It does.
It goes up,
It
yeah.
goes up.
So
It's just that it
yeah,
goes up by a lower rate when we get older and older. But it's still high. It's still higher than when we're very young. When we're very young,
yeah,
it's very low.
sure.
So this is just to explain partially why the ARR goes up as time goes on, because the risk goes up with age, and so we're missing out on a lot of that baseline risk to that we could prevent, and also the risk is cumulative over time, even after the peak, which would also increase the ARR further if we had followed them longer. We can even see that just even without the extended study. In the initial extended study, at each follow-up time period, we can, if we took the unvaccinated and we drew an absolute line from any of the vaccinated groups and we did that at 24, 26, 28, 30, that line would get bigger and bigger and bigger as we go further out. The absolute risk reduction, even in the very initial study, gets larger and larger and larger at the further time points. So if we just stop the clock at 30, well, all you're going to do is get the line at that point. That's the cumulative absolute risk reduction by the age of 30. Now, if someone were to say the cumulative absolute risk reduction by the age of 30 is 0.045, that would have been fine. People may still get misled by that, but it's very misleading to just say unqualified without a temporal frame that the absolute risk reduction is 0.045. Because if we follow them further, which
Yeah,
this group did,
if it's growing, it's
yeah,
not growing linearly,
yes,
which
it's
we have
growing
seen, like
exponentially.
yeah, no, even exponentially, we haven't seen that. Unfortunately,
The thing
that's
is, that's why I'm going to say this study, because this study didn't.
yeah. I mean, because we have a study of 4 years.
Well, we have a
Four,
study that
four,
goes further, and we do keep seeing that. So,
yeah,
and by
just for additional 4 years. Just for
yes,
additional 4 years.
yes. So at minimum, what we should be doing, what you should be doing is saying,
And the risk goes up exponentially because as you age, and
yes,
again, like I believe that no, the risk kind of does not plateau. The risk is cumulative risk, which
yes,
goes up, up, up.
it's a
So
cumulative.
I'm
Yeah,
saying the graph that you showed me, I think that graph suffers from mortality. And so ideally, if
mortality.
I were to model the, no, not this one, the other graph,
This one.
ideally I would say as you grow in age, the cumulative risk grows.
Yes,
But
yeah, this is just incidence. This graph is just looking at incidence. I'm saying that that's compatible with the cumulative risk growing. It's just
yeah,
measuring something different. Yeah, this is fully compatible with the cumulative risk growing. This is just saying in each age group, how many cases per 100,000 were
got it, got it.
observed.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
this is
okay.
fully compatible
But
with
we agree that with age, the cumulative risk goes
yes,
up.
yes.
Yeah, it
But that's
doesn't come down.
why,
Okay.
yes, but that's also why the ARR goes up. That's
Yes. Again, like I said, the ARR does not always go up, and you also have to
and this is
see
why I
if
give
the
you
ARR
evidence.
is following the same exponential pattern or not.
Yes, yes, the ARR. So that's why I provided evidence both in this initial study and the follow-up extended study that at all
Mhm.
time points, because here's the important thing to notice. Like, look, if we looked at the different ages at follow-up and we saw, okay, it's higher, it's lower, it's higher, it's lower, I would agree. I would say, look, maybe the ARR will be higher, maybe the ARR will be lower. We just don't have a reason to lean in any direction. That's not what we see here. At every point, it's higher. 24 to 26, 26 to 28, 28 to 30, 30 to 32, 30 to 34. If you were to draw the line between each of these things, it's higher and it keeps getting higher. So we have reason to believe the trend goes in that direction. It's not like we just are going higher, lower, higher, lower. It's all over the place. It's pointing, the data we have does point in a given direction. Now, maybe it'll have a different exponent at some points and other. We can model, maybe we can use the risks here to model that. But what I am going to say at minimum is that it's going to be higher than 0.045. In fact, in the follow-up study, those vaccinated under 17 was higher than 0.045. It was 0.15. And again, that's just to 34. So that is a very important thing to note in absolute risk reduction. It is a time sensitive metric.
Yeah.
And in this case, it's understating. Saying the absolute risk reduction of invasive cervical cancer is only 0.045 is understating the true benefit. The true
I mean,
benefit.
we have what's the maximum follow-up we have, and what's the best ARR we have from the observational data?
Yeah, the best ARR follow-up we have, and again, this is from primarily observed, not extrapolated,
Mhm.
primarily observed from AR. The best ARR is 4 years later than the one you posted, which is to
Mhm.
34, and it's it's 0.15 for those vaccinated under 17 to unvaccinated by 34 years of age. The extrapolated ones, I
No,
tried
not
to,
the extrapolated
yeah,
ones that we have observed.
yeah,
What's the observed ARR?
yeah.
The
So
what's the
observe,
best
yeah,
observed
point
ARR?
one point. It's about 3 times higher than what you posted, 0.15.
Okay, fair, fair. 0.15. Okay, okay,
0.15, and just by the age of 34.
sure.
And if we look at the ones that, um, yeah, okay, and then we have data, but that we didn't have ones, highest incidence space 250 to 30, we're age 38. Um, okay, so yeah, so okay, so a threefold difference just from looking at uh the 17 under 17.
I'm okay. Let's
Okay,
assume it's 0.15.
but I'm not, no, but it's not, but the truth is, even that is probably not what it is. It's probably not, it's
That's
probably,
what we know. That's what we
No, no,
know.
no.
We can
That's the
extrapolate
minimum. That's
everything,
the
but that
minimum
would
we
not be
know.
fair, you know?
No, 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 no. That's the. I think
What do
it
you think
is
the ARR would be? What's the best ARR for like
what I
except for the
think it would
measles?
be. Yeah, what I think it would be. The bet. My estimation, in my estimations, just crudely, from looking at, uh, from looking at the ARR rate of growth and trying to model that based on what we know about the incidence of different age groups.
Mhm.
My it's going to be anywhere from point point 0.5 to 1%. 0.1%, 0.5% to 1% lifetime. And again, that's not going to 90. That's going to the average lifespan of around like 75, somewhere around there. The
Mhm.
lifetime benefit, if you vaccinate before 17 for invasive cervical cancer, the estimated best AR will be anywhere from 0.5% to 1% for uh and if we include other invasive cervical cancers, slightly higher than that.
Yeah.
That's so what I would suggest, if you're presenting the ARRs, you should always qualify that by
Uh, right. I think it's a fair point. I'll take that. So let's
okay.
assume that the observed ARR from this observational cohort is 0.15, and then if you extrapolate as your best estimate is, let's say, 0.5 to 1%.
Mhm.
Fine. I think I can live with that. Not a problem.
Okay, cool. Um, good. And it's an important and the other thing, there's another point here that the other thing ARR depends on is incidence. Like you already mentioned that there's certain areas where there is a lower rates of infection than others, where
Yeah.
there's less benefit. There's areas of high rates of infection than others, where there's more benefits.
Right.
This
Sure.
Swedish cohort, it's in Sweden. There's very low rates of cervical cancer as it is in Sweden.
Sure.
Even if we assume that the death rates or the incidence rates were a fourth of what they were reported to be that we talked about earlier, the rates in India are higher than they are in Sweden or the United States.
Not in all the cohorts. Not in all the cohorts. If you look
In
at the registry data, not in all the cohorts.
wait, but I'm saying overall. So I'm just saying
Yeah. Like
Sweden.
I said, even that cohort is not like a proper representative of the entire country. It's a 10%.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
no,
they're
I
saying it's
understand.
10%.
I
But
understand, but
even
even
then, yeah.
no, I'm saying even in the worst case, even in the most unrepresented, I'm saying even if we say because of all of these problems,
Right. Let's assume it's overall. Okay.
yeah,
Let's assume it's
yeah.
overall. Yeah,
But
sure.
I'm saying even if it were only a fourth of what they're
Yeah.
reporting it,
Okay.
that's still going to be a lot higher of an incidence than Sweden.
Sure. Yeah.
So
Okay.
the ARR, so that estimate, that 0.5 to 1 ARR that I just mentioned,
Yeah.
that's for Sweden. That's my
Yeah.
extrapolate. It's not my extrapolate for India. My extrapolate for India will be even higher than
Yeah.
0.5 to 1 because the baseline rate overall is higher for India than it is in Sweden.
Sure. Okay.
All right. And then so okay, so we agree that the point here you say you take the point. So the point here, this is understating the benefit.
Yeah, like I didn't
Okay.
go through the follow-up study, so yeah, I'll go through the follow-up study and then yeah, I'll look at it
Okay.
and the observed ARR would be done 0
From the set vaccinating
0.15.
before
Yeah,
seven. That's for vaccinating observed benefit for vaccinating before 17 years old
yeah.
to unvaccinated.
0.15. Yeah. So the 0.15 is the observed
Yeah,
best ARR. Yes.
at age 34. At age 34.
Yes. Yes.
Um, so and then another thing to note, by the way, in that cohort study, the the HPV vaccination is three shots, right? It's you get a total of three injections. Or at least you're supposed to. But if you look at the different uh different cohorts,
Mhm.
uh 20% of those vaccinated before 17 years of age did not get all three injections.
Right.
For those vaccinated above 20 years of age, only about half of them got all three injections.
Mhm.
And so there's a lot, and that's part of the reason vaccinated before 17 years of age, by the way, had a better benefit because they had a higher percentage of those who got all three injections.
Sure.
So if everyone, per recommendation, if everyone did get all three of those vaccinations, you'd probably get an even higher ARR. But that's another point. So okay, we agree on that. And then one thing I want to also, when we're comparing absolute metrics, absolute risk reductions, and absolute harm increases, we want to make sure
And
we're
this
talking.
study did not, the observational study did not report harm. And
No,
that's
I
why,
agree. I agree. I agree. I'm talking about when we do it.
yeah. So that's
When
why I
we,
had to mention it from the
yeah,
future
yeah, yeah, no,
trial.
I understand.
Yeah.
If we're going, I'm saying if we're going to do that, we want to make sure that we're reporting harm in a sort of apples to apples or as close as we can way. So and I don't know how you got the point three. I'm not sure how you got that from the future trials. I don't know what
So
you would.
there was a pooled estimate. There was a study. I think it's you can open one of these studies.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think it's the second or the third study. And then you'd see that
Is it this one?
the difference in risk was like,
Wait, what risk of what
yeah,
though? What risk of what endpoint? Like an
yeah,
adverse
yes.
event?
Adverse events, yes. So
Any
I
adverse
think the
event.
difference was like 0.1, 0.2, or 0.3%.
Wait, hold on. I'm just asking. Let me just make sure I'm clear. It's the absolute risk of any adverse event?
Yeah, I
Okay.
guess.
Okay. So I need to point out then if it's the absolute risk of any adverse event, I need to point out that that's an apples to orange comparison because we're only looking at the absolute benefit of invasive cervical cancer, which is, an invasive cancer. It's one of the various invasive cancers it prevents. It also does other benefits, by the way. It prevents actinic keratoses. So we're isolating one benefit and that benefit being a reduced risk of one type of invasive cancer. And we're comparing
Yeah, but
that to,
we're also talking about harm from similar kind of studies. I haven't looked at the other studies, which are the other benefits.
okay, I'm just
So
talking
this
about
was
general purpose.
primarily in
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
context of
No,
cervical cancer.
no, I understand. I'm just making sure that what we're not doing is we're
Yeah.
not saying, you know, if someone were to talk to say, hey, look, you can have a 1% reduced risk of getting invasive cancer, but you'll have a 10% increased risk of having some side effect. What do you do? Well, that really depends on what those side effects are and what proportions, because there are a lot of different worlds in which I would say, yes, that's a worthy trade. I would like to have a 10% risk of any side effect. That could just be a headache. Okay, I get a headache. The headache goes away. That was a side effect. Great. But it's not at
Yeah,
the level of
I
invasive
think
cancer.
they were not. I think if you open the study once, I think it does mention its serious side effects.
Serious or
Serious.
okay, well
Just
that's
check.
not okay. Well, that I know is not true because I know the rates of
Let's just
serious
check
adverse
this.
events.
Yeah, see,
Yeah.
it says serious adverse event.
No, I know that's in the title, which is why I went to the future studies and looked at the rate of SAEs in the trial, in the intervention and placebo groups. And
Yeah.
actually, the rate of SAEs was higher in the placebo over when I pulled the two future trials. SAEs was slightly higher in the placebo. There was like 48, 52 in the first one, and it was like somewhere around those same levels, but it was like 0.1% higher in the placebo group. So it's not serious adverse. It's not SAEs.
Uh,
I can tell
yeah,
you that
maybe
right
we can
now.
check this. Maybe we can check probably.
Yeah, we can.
I mean,
Sure we
not
can.
those. Maybe just open the same article that
Yeah,
the study that.
I'm opening it right now. Here, look. Garland was the future one. If we
Mhm.
look at serious adverse events, future one in the vaccine it was 1.8, in the placebo it was 1.7. In future two, by the way, it was basically flipped, and you ended up with a point.
Look at the Rasinger study. Vaccinated five.
That was
Yeah,
five.
look at that.
That was five events. Yes, but that wasn't the
Yeah,
future. Wait, you said future.
yeah. So I mean, that could be
Rasinger
like
wasn't. Wait, but Rasinger wasn't. Rasinger wasn't future.
No, I get it. So maybe I think that was like a mistake on my part. I think it was a pooled risk. I should have
And
mentioned
by the
the
way,
pool.
Rasinger, I'm familiar
Yeah.
with that study. That's the one. That is the one that didn't have that, and I'm familiar with those five SAEs. Those five, and no, and that doesn't give you that rate anyway, even if you use Rasinger. And I can tell you that I looked into each and every one of the SAEs in Rasinger, and there the I those one of them was from a patient who joined the trial who already had out of control diabetes and
Hmm.
had an SAE related to diabetes. Surprise, surprise. Another one who had a toe infection 2 days after the vaccination. No one vaccinated him in his toe. We know it takes longer than 2 days to develop a bacterial infection in your toe than 2 days. Uh, and so it's basically stories, cases like that. And the group, the vaccine group was twice as large as the control group anyway. So, and even if you were to take those as all caused by the vaccine, which we know they weren't, you don't get that figure. You don't get the figure that you were showing of 0.3%.
Yeah, can you go back to the studies that you were
Yeah,
opening?
sure. So
Yeah.
when we look
Which
at
was
I'm looking at the table. Yes, I'm gonna.
yeah,
So I
right.
know the
So you're
future.
looking
So
at
future. This is the future one study.
no,
They
I
give
get
you
it. I
the
get it. I get it. So look at some of the studies, vaccinated 50, 1.8, 1.7. So that's also higher.
wait. Hold on, hold on, hold on.
Yeah,
Which
look at
one are you referring
the
to?
Garland future.
Yeah, Garland Future 1.8, 1.7, and but
Yes.
that's Future
Uh,
one. But Future two had the reverse effect.
no,
Future
I
two,
get it. I get it.
and
So
the net, if you combine both Future one and Future two,
yeah, yeah,
it
yeah,
was 0.1%
yeah.
higher in the placebo group than the vaccine group for SAEs.
Yeah, let's go down. Right. Even in the first one, if you look at the first one,
The first
go up. Even the first study, yeah, see
heartburn.
the 4 and 3.5. Then you have 1,
Yeah,
then
yeah,
you have
yeah.
50, then
So what
1.8,
so I
1.7.
understand. I understand.
So
I'm not okay.
go down further. And then you have zero point 0.6 and zero point 0.2. This is the Yoshikawa. Then you have 10 and
Yes, I
9.
understand. Okay,
You
hold
have
on.
3.3 and 2.6.
Just 1 second. Just 1 second. Okay,
Yeah.
one second. I'm just trying to figure out what you did. Because I look, I'm just gonna I understand that there are certain individual trials where the vaccine group had some effect some rate that was higher than the placebo group. There are trials where the reverse is true, where the placebo, and when you add them all, I'm so you could pool them all, you can do a meta-analysis to pool them all. I'm just trying
Yeah,
to figure out.
let's try and calculate the pool risk out of
Yeah,
this. Can
that's
we do
fine.
that?
That's something to do. Wait, but okay, we can do that.
Okay.
We can do that. But I'm just trying to figure out where this comes from
Yeah,
because
so
this is a
I
claim
think
you
the
made.
absolute harm is somewhere like 0.3% from future
Okay,
trials
but
instead
where
of
does that number
future.
come? But where does
Like I
that
said,
number come from?
so I think you go back to the previous study. There was this study which I was
Because you
comparing.
said absolute harm is somewhere
Uh,
0.3
Yeah,
from future
yeah.
trials, right?
I just go back to the study.
Wait,
So I
but
think I shouldn't have mentioned future trials. I should have mentioned the pooled risk
okay, so
from the
you did
studies
so
which
wait,
I've done.
so you pulled the risk? You did a
Yeah, I mean,
analysis for
one of the studies, probably it was this study or one of the studies I referenced, they pooled the risk and from that. So I think even in
okay, so
this
you pulled
study, can you go up? Can you go up a little bit? So if you see this, no, go down, go down, go down. So I think if you look at this study,
which one?
the Jora
Okay.
2015 is 3.3 and 2.6.
Yeah.
I think this was the study, and there were a couple of other studies. And so when you pooled the risk, it came
Did
out
you
to be
so
like
what did
something
which
like
studies did you pull the risk from?
maybe what we can do is we can pool the risk from all of the studies and
I'm
see
just
if it's
yes, well
closer
we can
to.
do that. I'm just again, I'm just trying to figure out what you did to get this number. Did you pull the risk from all the studies or did you pull the risk from the bad studies for vaccines? Did you cherry pick? Did you I don't know. I don't know what you did.
No, I think there was a study, so it's mentioned in one of the references. So I think I forgot the name of the study, but that study did a pooled risk, and that pooled risk came to be around point 0.3. So it should be in my references. We can do that exercise
Okay, so
now. The
I'm
point
yeah,
being,
so I'm
even if
gonna
you do the pooled risk, look, why don't you open the study and we can pool the risk?
Yeah, well, that I'd have to do in RevMan. I'd have to, or some
Okay,
meta-analysis,
just
because you
have a
don't
look
just
at it.
add them.
Have,
You don't add
you
them.
know
You
what?
you do a
Just go through
meta-analytic
the
summation. I
study.
could do that.
Just go through the study from the top to the bottom.
Yeah.
And do you believe that the pool risk is going to be higher in the vaccinated group looking at this cohort or no? You have
I don't
4,
know. I
you
don't
have
know.
5, you have 1.8, and then there's a lower, then there's similar, as mine, slightly lower, slightly lower.
Yeah,
Then
I don't
again,
know.
you have a
I'd have to
go
do the
down, go
meta.
down,
I don't
go
know.
down, and then you have 0.4, 0.6, then you have 0.6, 0.2, then you have 10 and 9, then you have 3.3 and 2.6, then you have
Huh?
0.3, 0.7. So I'm saying the
Then you have
pool,
0.5 and 1.
yeah, but point being that there are
I
more
don't know.
studies
Yeah, so my answer to
and
you,
the
I'm answering your
magnitude
questions.
of risk
Wait, but my
is also
answer,
there.
hold on. So my answer to your question is I don't know. I can do so you wouldn't just add them. What you would do is you would do a meta-analytic summation to pool it, which I can
Yeah,
do. I can do that.
yeah, sure.
I just my answer is just looking at this, would I know which one is higher? And if it's higher, is it going to be 0.3 or higher? I don't know the answer to that. It's not clear to me that it is.
Sure.
I just want to know now if look, if you don't know where you got this or you made a mistake or you fucked up something, just say that. It's fine. Because I don't
Sure.
know. All I'm
Made a
trying to,
mistake.
I
Yeah,
don't,
I made a mistake.
okay.
Sure.
You made a
But
mistake. So
even if that
we don't know
number
where that.
is, yeah, so even if that number is not zero point 0.3, if it is zero point 0.2, if it is zero point 0.4, if it is zero point 0.5, it's not negative. I think that's the
Well,
part you would agree.
well, I'm not sure about that either. I may do the meta-analytic summation and it turns out that because of the
You can
pooling,
do that.
yeah.
You can do that, and you will
But
come
also,
across a number
but you should
that
also know, yeah, yeah.
it is not negative, and there is
Okay,
harm,
so
which
if it
is
is, wait, so let's just set the goalpost then. If we pull the SAE risk
yeah.
of all those trials and it's negative, if the SAE risk is negative,
Yeah,
what?
then I concede. Then I concede. You win.
Okay, okay, fine. So I can do that.
Okay,
I can do the meta-analytic summation there. Fine.
sure.
So and then the other point is even SAEs, some
Hmm.
SAEs are not at the level of invasive cervical carcinomas. So I've been in trials and I've sent people to the hospital for SAEs
As
and
long as, look, again, we'll come back to this, and if your ARR, the observed
yeah.
ARR, is 0.15, let's say in the group, and if your absolute harm is somewhere like, let's say, a zero point 0.2 or a zero point 0.3, then the harm is still higher than the
Well, it
benefit, right?
depends. It depends on what kind of harm you're talking because well, so that's important because point it's a, if the SAEs are zero point 0.3 and we look into what those SAEs are and they're
I
somewhat
mean, the
similar than the
study.
S
Yeah, okay.
and
I
they're
think
somewhat
we'll
similar.
have to do a meta for that. Yeah, you
Wait,
can
wait.
do a meta analysis,
Yeah,
and we
no, no,
can.
but
Yeah, yeah, sure,
just listen to what I'm saying.
sure.
Because if someone were to ask me, hey, do you want a 0.15 reduced risk of an invasive cancer versus a 0.3% increase in SAEs?
Yeah,
My question would be, what SAEs? Because
sure.
I looked at the SAEs. When I look at so for example, and by the way, the Reisinger one,
Hmm.
the Reisinger one, this this is not accurate. I can tell you that right now. This is not a
Okay,
percentage. It wasn't 5%, 0%. This
okay,
author is misreporting that. I'm familiar with Reisinger trial. There were numerically five SAEs. Numerically, not percent. It was a numeric five SAEs because I know because I went through each one of them. It wasn't
okay.
5% of the trial. No, none of it's not gonna have. It was. It did not. It was five patients, not
Sure.
5% of the patients. This author misreported. That looks like a misreport. But in any case, the point being, if some if but if I because I went through all those five SAEs, if someone said, "Would you rather have a toe infection that cures upon being treated for antibiotics? If you rather have renal failure that gets cured and you go on normal, if you rather have some of these things or an invasive cancer I'd probably choose the toe infection that I went to the hospital for IV antibiotics for.
Sure.
So even SAEs, even comparing it to SAEs, it's not an apples to apples comparison. Invasive, unless you're saying the SAEs themselves were something at or on the level of having an invasive cancer, that I could compare one to one. But I'm going to need
I
some
mean,
sort of,
if you look at the VAERS database, and you can see signals for some really problematic, serious events.
I,
So I'm
I,
saying that you cannot completely
I'm not completely
reject all of
dismissing,
that. Yeah.
although I am saying that because remember now we are on trial data,
Yeah.
right? Now when we're looking at these numbers, we are looking at the trial data. So yes, I'm not completely dismissing the VAERS. I'm saying that we need something more than just VAERS for me to have a strong belief. And what is the absolute risk in VAERS? I mean, this is like, I mean, it's not point
See,
three.
again,
It's
we
not
can
point
go
three of
on and on and on. Like
paralysis.
I said, nobody has any incentive to establish a causality between,
Okay.
yeah, VAERS. And then you have, that's why you have case studies and people coming out and then filing cases. I mean, like you have 3,000 cases against
Okay.
GLP-1 companies, right?
Sure.
And they did
I
not
understand there's
establish causality for Nion. People are getting
wait,
blind, right? So I mean, there's
but that we can talk. That's a whole different. I'm happy we can have a
yeah.
whole separate debate about Nion and GLP ones because
The point
but
being,
that's a whole.
nobody is going to conduct a study on Nion and
Well, they are
like
conducting studies. That's
yeah,
not
I mean
true.
yeah, you're talking about the Finnish
Yeah, there's
registry,
people are
the
doing
optimal
studies. They're
dosage.
doing it. It's not just something like VAERS for Nion.
Those are not causality studies. Those are observational studies
Yeah,
from
but we
where
can
they
make.
said, okay, it has increased risk of
But
Nion.
we
Point
can
being, the
make.
company is not going to do that study.
Okay. Here's what I propose.
Uh-huh.
What we do have, we have all we have all of these randomized control trials.
Sure.
It may be they each and every one of them by themselves may be underpowered, but cumulatively, if we did meta-analytic summation with meta-analysis, we can increase the power.
Sure.
We can look at what the SAEs are. We can adjudicate what those what the harms are, compare that to the benefits, understanding that the benefits are higher than what you presented them to be, and
Hmm.
probably with extrapolate, well, they are, and probably we have every reason to believe are even higher than the observed if we extrapolate to the lifetime benefit. And then we can see what the rates are in the meta-analytic summation and see what those rates of what exactly are we talking about? Are we talking about a toe infection? Are we
Sure.
talking about death? And if it turns out that that is lower, that the rates of things and the quality of severity is lower than invasive cancer with a lower rate, then perhaps we can say that then this statement here, your conclusion, which was a very strong conclusion, that there's no doubt that HPV vaccines harm more people than it helps, perhaps we can dial that conclusion back. We can say, okay, maybe it's a little bit more, maybe it's not as clear as I thought it was. Maybe HPV vaccine, maybe it's not so clear that HPV vaccines harm more people than it helps. We should do more. We should look into that more. Is that fair?
Sure.
Okay. Because I think that was a very strong conclusion. It was a very strongly worded conclusion. I don't think it is clear that there's no doubt HPV vaccines harm more than it helps. I think we may have different views on that, but I surely don't think there's no doubt. There's a doubt. We have a doubt right here.
Look, I mean, you put it out on social media, right? And then you have, but then you also have to factor in that there's a completely different group of doctors who are saying that these vaccines have no side effects and these many people are dying and these many incidences are happening and everybody should get a vaccine, right? But
JC,
I get
I
your
can
point.
only talk about
But I
what
get your
you're
point.
talking to me.
Yeah.
I'm talking to
And that's why I'm saying you're fine. That's why I said I don't have any problem. Yeah, you're right. I
okay.
think I can definitely tone down that statement because we don't have the meta-analysis as
Okay.
of this point,
And I'm
and we
happy. And
can
by
take
the
the
way,
risk. Sure.
I'm happy to do it. I'm happy. It'll take a bit of
No, it's all right. I'll do some work tonight, and maybe we can then compare notes probably at
sure.
some point later on.
It'll take some I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow because I do have work, but it'll take some time to do that meta-analysis. But I think I can get it done in a reasonable time.
Okay,
Maybe a week or two or something like that.
sure.
Um, and because the meta-analysis, it pulls the different based on the weights of the
Yeah,
different
yeah,
study, how
yeah,
many
yeah.
they are,
Sure,
and we can see what the rates are between the two groups.
sure.
Um, but as in the meantime, as far as this goes, I would say that we would so the main things, benefits are greater than what was in here. The risk, we still have to do the meta-analysis, and it's not clear that HPV harm more than it helped as of now. It's not clear. We have
Sure.
okay,
Sure.
cool. All right, so then
We can be reasonable that way. Yeah, sure. Sure. We need more data to establish that. Sure.
yes, okay. So then I'm happy to good. Well, listen. For me, I'm happy to talk to you and to set clear goalposts, and I'm happy to I'm happy to see because a lot of people like when I discuss they're not willing to walk anything back. They're not willing to walk back any statement they made. They dig their heels in, and so I'm glad to see that you're not doing that. I'm glad to see that
Yeah,
you're
I
going.
mean, see, I'm a data-driven guy, and I'm pretty sure the discussion that we've had, you would not have any doubts that I'm not somebody who's talking out of his ass. I understand these things, right? And and you would also agree that there's a fair bit of criticism from my side regarding the numbers which are being thrown casually on social media. You've done your estimates, I've done my estimates. These numbers are wildly exaggerated and totally based on incomplete data, right? And
Well,
so
that I have
that's
to look for. I would want you to send me the
yeah,
data.
for
Yeah,
sure,
yeah.
for sure. But
I
then
know you're claiming that. The reason I'm
prima facie,
prima
if you look at
facie,
the
my
registry
crude
data,
estimate. Well, prima
yes,
facie, my
and then you
crude
also look
numbers
at
are lower.
the incidence numbers, they are trending downwards, right? So that's
So I
also
have to
another
see
point
that.
of contention.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then the point being, there has not been a single placebo-controlled randomized control trial, which we have established. Future trials were randomized, but then the follow-up trial, which was done for
Mhm.
cervical cancer
Yeah.
endpoints, it was a quasi randomized
Yeah,
control trial.
quasi
It was a
randomized, which is
quasi-controlled trial. Wouldn't even say
yes,
randomized because the two groups would have different
right, right.
baseline characteristics, right? So at this point of time, the benefits of the vaccine, which you observed, largely comes from observational studies, which again, like a sort C, and the extended follow-up, I put to them. So
And inferences from like CIN 2, 3 from the randomized control trials.
yeah, like
Yeah,
sort B and sort C, right? But we don't have a sort
sure,
A
sure.
evidence. Do you agree with
So look,
that?
if the point is there are groups of doctors that overstate things, I agree.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
gonna I'm not gonna disagree with that. But look,
And they
JC,
probably also
but
they also probably overstate the current condition, like
okay, but
the number of cases which are happening, the incidences which are happening,
that I have to look
and
at the modeling. I have to look at the modeling to see that. But look, here's the thing, JC. I'm not
yeah,
talking to those doc. I can only talk to what you've said because I'm
fair
talking to
enough.
you. And you
Sure,
could talk to what I've said because you're talking to me.
sure,
So all I'm saying is that yeah, you might be able to say, okay, well, you know, there's I overstated. I should have stated this less confidently, or I should have it should have been different, or I understated the benefit. But there are these other doctors who overstate the benefit. Maybe that's true. Maybe there are other doctors who overstate the benefit. But
sure.
I can't do much about that. I'm not talking to them. I'm talking to you, and I think you've understated the benefit. So
Sure.
I'm glad we agree on that at least.
Yeah, sure. And I think this is a good discussion, and this is precisely what I would love for people to come and do with me. Like like we didn't get personal, right? It
No,
was a
no, no.
perfect civil debate. It was
Yeah.
a data-driven debate, and I think
And
you agreed to certain
I think it
points, and
was
I agreed to
productive.
certain points.
I think it was
Yeah,
productive. I think that there was a change in credence here. So
and that's what science is all
which is
about,
good.
right?
Yeah.
So sure,
I'm glad to see that you have changed your credence. That's good. And I hope and we'll see what happens with the meta analysis. I'm happy
sounds good.
to look at that. Well,
Perfect.
I think
Yeah.
well this was a good discussion. I'm glad talking to you and I will hopefully we'll have a follow-up.
Sounds good.
All right, very good. Well, I got to run. I
Awesome.
got to work, but
Sure,
Take
of
care.
course.
Wish you the best.
Yeah, take care, buddy. Yeah, bye-bye.
Care. All right. Bye bye.